Okay, now live.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Operations Policy and Planning Committee meeting for the 21st of November. I'd like to start off by recognizing and acknowledging the Esquimalt and Songhees nations, on whose traditional territories we live, we learn, and we do our work. I'd like to move an approval of the agenda. I know we have a few items to add, but if I could have a mover of the agenda first, that would be great. Thank you, Trustee Kwan. All right, so I have a couple of amendments to move to the agenda, if I may. One, to add two presenters under B, Colin Savage and Mark Liu, I believe his last name is. And a second amendment, if we can move them as a suite, that would be, I think, helpful. But I'm at the committee's disposal if you disagree. The other amendment is just to remove the typo from H1, which is the word correspondence from the end of the motion at H1. It just shouldn't be there, just the typo. Were there any other amendments or additions to the agenda? Oh, okay, hearing none. Again, just a reminder, I think we have mostly voting members of the committee, but if there's any questions about who has the ability to vote tonight, let me know. But if I could have the voting members vote to amend for the agenda as amended. All those in favor? Wonderful, and that's unanimous. All right, so we have an agenda as amended, and our next item of business is the election of a chair. So if, again, the voting members of the committee would please text your nominations to our scrutineers this evening, and thank you very much. Scrutineers, appreciate your services again. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that. And again, let me know if there's any questions. All right, thank you, trustees and scrutineers. It looks like we have two nominees. So what I'll do is I'll read out the nominations one at a time, and each trustee can let me know whether they accept the nomination or decline it. So the first nominee is Trustee Painter. Do you accept the nomination?
With thanks, I do.
Thank you. And our second nominee is Trustee Kwan. Do you accept the nomination?
Thank you to my colleagues, I decline.
All right, thank you, Trustee Kwan. All right, well, that simplifies things tonight, folks. By acclamation, your chair.
Wait, let's do that again.
Is Trustee Painter. Congratulations, Trustee Painter.
Thank you very much. And
I will pass things over to you. Just we've got one more item under trustee election, and it's just a motion to destroy the text ballots. And so I will leave it in your capable hands to take us forward. Thank you.
okay, may I have a motion to destroy the text messages ballots? Thank you, Trustee Duncan. All those in favor, raise your hands. And it's unanimous, so that is done. And moving on to the minutes of October 17th, 2022. The recommended motion is that if someone would like to move the motion, that the minutes be approved, and then we will discuss any amendments. So moved by Trustee Duncan. And does anyone have any, excuse me, any amendments to the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of of adopting or approving the minutes, please signify by raising your hand. And that's unanimous. Business arising. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Oh, Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just briefly, at A4 of the minutes, at F1 of the minutes, there was a request that I made to have the June 2022 monthly financial report added to a future meeting, and I just wanted to make folks aware that that will be added to the next Budget Advisory Committee packet.
Thank you very much for that. Anything else? Seeing none, all moving along. Okay, presentations to the committee. And Trustee Duncan, could you text me the names of the other two presenters just so that I can have my own swing at mispronouncing them?
Absolutely. Via text? You'd prefer it via text or via email?
Via text, please.
Okay, will do.
We'll begin with public presentations. District Occupational Health and Safety Committee, Cindy Roth.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay, great. Good evening. My name is Cindy Rompf, and I'm the second Vice President and Health and Safety Officer of the GVTA. I'm also the co-chair of the District Occupational Health and Safety Committee for SD61. The District Occupational Health and Safety Committee represents the GVTA, CUPE 832, CUPE 947, and PVPA of the Greater Victoria School District. We have come together to take a strong stance regarding health and safety concerns throughout our district in regards to budget cuts to custodial staff. Funding and work hours need to be reinstated to our daytime custodial staff as soon as possible. A letter was sent to you regarding our concerns, and it has the signatures of representatives of each union and association to show how strongly we feel about this. This letter carries the weight and concerns of every employee of our school district, every single staff member. We have strong concerns that SD61 is not following the provincial communicable disease guidelines for K-12 school settings, or even our own school district communicable disease prevention plan for school sites. Page 7 of the provincial communicable disease guidelines, frequently touched surfaces, cleaning and disinfection of frequently touched surfaces should occur at least once in a 24-hour period and when visibly dirty. Frequently touched surfaces are items touched by a larger number of students and staff, and it goes on to list them. Page 5 from SD61 School District Communicable Disease Prevention Plan, general cleaning and disinfecting of the premises and cleaning, disinfecting of frequently touched surfaces at least once every 24 hours. This is not being done every 24 hours. This is not even being done once a week. In some cases, these are being cleaned every pro-D. That's once a month. This is not the fault of our custodians. Their workload is way too much, and this has been compounded from years past of custodial cuts. There is only so much that one can do in the hours that they have been assigned. Now let's go on to desks and chairs used by multiple students. At the middle school level, particularly in grade 8s, there are students transitioning to different classrooms to prepare them for secondary school, and the multiple transitions that happen there. One desk in one day will be used by multiple students, and at the elementary level, it's unreasonable to think that a student stays at their desk for the entire day. These students, particularly in the primary grades, can't sit still for 15 minutes, let alone the whole day. All the students are touching multiple surfaces throughout the classroom, and do you think their hands actually stay clean after they wash and disinfect them? I have a kid in kindergarten, and we are still trying to teach him to not put his hands on his face, in his mouth, and in his nose. Clean and disinfect any surface that is visibly dirty. For those of you who have children, think back to when they were 5 or 6 years old. Now think of how they ate at the table and what that table looked like afterwards. Were those tables just as clean before they started? Absolutely not. Maybe it's just my kids, but I have to sweep under the table, wipe the table afterwards, because at this age, kids haven't developed the fine motor skills to control how clean they eat. Now think of a class of 26 kindergarten students eating lunch at their desks. Because of the custodial cuts, these desk surfaces are cleaned maybe once a week. These kids and teachers are doing their best. However, these surfaces need to be disinfected more frequently than once a week. There are also major concerns regarding students with bad allergies. The lack of frequent disinfection of desk surfaces poses a serious health issue for these students. You know what would help improve this? More hours for custodians, restoring funding to custodians. In many schools, the cleaning, disinfecting of surfaces and items were shared with the night custodians. Because of the cuts to daytime custodians, many responsibilities that used to be done by the daytime custodians have now been added to the list of responsibilities of nighttime custodians. And this is on top of the responsibilities they already have. The hours of the night custodian have not increased, but their list of responsibilities have significantly expanded. We know that the district is doing their best to adjust to these funding cuts. However, these conditions are not sustainable. Many of our workspaces have turned into health and safety issues, not just for staff, but for our students as well. Toxic body fluids such as puke and urine are left alone if there are no custodians present at the time. The custodians of SD61 have some of the longest runs in the province. That means they have the most square footage they're responsible for, and this was before the cuts. And now they have more and more being added to their list of things to do in a day. This is not reasonable and this is not sustainable. Because of low morale of other working groups in our district, and now due to the custodial cuts, their workspaces have turned into health and safety issues. These cuts have turned one working group against another. Morale amongst custodial staff is really, really low. They feel unappreciated, overworked, and the work conditions are very poor. Why should our custodians stay working in our district? Under these conditions, they are not. Many are starting
Cindy,
to look for
I
other
ask you to-
employment.
Cindy,
Okay.
I'm going to ask you to sum up, okay?
Okay. I urge you trustees and Cedarman to work together to find a solution to restore funding to our custodians immediately. Our staff of SD61 deserve to work in a clean environment. It is our right to work in a safe, clean environment, and especially our students deserve to learn in a clean and safe environment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Cindy. And moving along, we'll now hear from VC PAC President Tracy Humphreys on custodial issues in the district.
Thanks, Rob.
And just to confirm, sorry, Tracy, just to confirm, you have 5 minutes, okay?
Yes, I understand that. And I'm really here to reiterate a lot of what Cindy has just shared, probably in a different way, because I am hearing from parents in the district. And so I'm just going to kind of run through. We have, like Cindy said, we're urgently asking for daytime custodians to be restored to full-time hours again. We have many health and safety issues that have been raised by parents and guardians since the beginning of the school year. And the essential message we're getting is that schools are not clean and they're not safe. So desks are only wiped once a week. They're used all day. They're eaten at least 2 times per day. Many students are touching that desk, and there are lots of other surfaces as well, and they're not being cleaned as often as they are supposed to be according to health and safety guidelines. Floors and carpets are not cleaned enough. There are broken toilets, broken bathroom doors, broken tampon machines. We're still not seeing period products in all washrooms. And as a consequence, we're seeing bodily fluids sometimes in washrooms because of the lack of, stocking up. And other bodily fluids, as Cindy mentioned, that are needing cleanup. There's students coming home. Their parents have shared stories with me of them coming home in different clothes because they had accidents, and the dirty clothes are sort of haphazardly wrapped in a bag, obviously probably by a teacher or an EA. And, we're curious to know who's cleaning up the areas where these accidents occurred. Stomach bugs, RSV, and COVID are all over the place right now, many reports, and staff and students are coming into schools while they are sick. Staff are working sick, students are coming in sick. Staff aren't trained to handle, the staff who are cleaning up, they're not really trained to handle cleaning up those fluids, and it's not safe, it's not a good idea, and they're already doing too much other work. I mean, it's often the principal or vice principal that's doing this on top of also sometimes having to act as an EA or go in and teach in a classroom due to a lot of the other kind of connected issues. And then the other thing is, and just bringing up I'm tying this into we have crowded classrooms and spaces that were not intended to be classrooms. We have ventilation spacing issues and very little mask use. So health and safety overall is a pretty big concern in the district by parents. And that's really all to say that we really, really urgently feel that this needs to be addressed now. It's not something that can wait a few months while we figure it out or talk about the budget and bring it in later. This is something that needs to be addressed right now because it is impacting students and staff and by extension families in the district. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Tracy. We have two more speakers. I'm not seeing them. They're not showing up on my screen just yet. Maybe Andy, you could let me know if they're here. Colin Savage.
Yes, admitting. Should they both be in together?
Yeah, yes, please. Yeah,
Okay.
with the committee meeting, so it's a public session.
Okay.
So, Colin Savage, welcome to the SD61 Operations Policy Committee meeting. You have 5 minutes to make your presentation. If you get over 5 minutes, I'll try to gently nudge you to conclude. And you're muted at this point, so I have the advantage on you.
This is for me, Rob?
No, it's for Colin.
Okay.
I've got you hitting or batting second.
Thank you.
Still muted, Colin.
Yeah, how's that?
That's great. Okay.
Okay, there we go. Good evening, trustees. I really appreciate you placing me on the speakers list. I'm addressing the Operations Policy and Planning Committee to oppose the recommendation for the current Cedar Hill Middle School design. I have background. I am a red seal tradesperson. I've worked in the lumber industry. I've worked in mines, pulp mills, and in the oil sands in Alberta. And I am also a district technology education teacher as well. And I taught for a number of years at Shoreline School, Central, junior secondary at the time, Cedar Hill Junior Secondary, Lambert Park, and Mount Doug. I've taught at Mount Doug. I taught math and challenge social studies, and so I've got a broad range of background. Originally, last May or so, I understood that there was going to be a rebuild of the Cedar Hill Middle School, and I was concerned. Being a shop teacher, I was concerned about what the shops would look like. I attended the June open house, and I was rather appalled that the shop or the ADST space was not going to have a dust or fume extraction system. And this really troubled me because then I noticed that the name for this let's call it a technology space to keep everything brief. I noticed that someone had coined the expression makerspace, but there was no definition for it. And then I've also seen that robotics have been suggested and all sorts of other endeavors that would require the school purchasing kits and somehow coming up and imagining how to use that space. So I thought it was putting the cart before the horse. No one's figured out the pedagogy or really what we expect our kids to know before they leave that space. You know, what are they going to be able to do? And I've noticed this very often in the past. The pedagogy is secondary to what happens to a facility, and you know, so I fought at Cedar Hill actually to keep the metal shop there. That is a very relevant program at the moment, It is robust, and it feeds to other secondary schools. So I was at Spectrum as a teacher on call just a couple of weeks ago, and there was a former student from Cedar Hill. And that person expressed delight at being in the metal shop at Spectrum. And he said that it was from his experience at Cedar Hill. But anyway, I'd like to step back a bit. And, as a result of the June open house, was I only appalled by the lack of thought that was going to go around this makerspace. I saw that there were other elements of the school that were deficient, and that's about the only way of describing it. And the other things that I've noticed is that in the school, there's not much classroom space. And if we've learned anything from COVID and the viruses that are circulating, we need more space. We don't need rooms that are the size of a postage stamp. We also need the room to function well for teaching and learning. There's no storage provided. We are in an era of high inflation, and so value engineering is occurring to try and keep the cost down to a budget that was established before the inflation took off. And to me, it doesn't make sense that we do that. The other thing is that the building is very much a heritage building, in my opinion. And so we're going to replace it with a box with a flat roof. Flat roofs are costing the district money because of leaks. We're in a region of the world where we get rain. We want to disperse water. We don't want to have it pooling on a roof and then causing us more maintenance costs. The idea of a net zero school is great. I fully support that. But some of the technology isn't there yet. And it is something that we need to pause and step back and take a look at if there are other ways of doing that. And not at the expense of.
Colin, I'll ask you to.
Okay.
I'll ask you to sum up there.
I'll sum up. I basically say that this should not go ahead as planned. I'd like to see the facility for the shops have a dust and fume extraction system, so electronics, so that woodwork, so that metalworking and some of those things that have been going on currently can carry on. Maybe maintain the same shops. The board has just spent thousands of dollars of remodeling it. Why would we suddenly rip it all down? And let's let pedagogy be the main driver.
Colin,
okay, I'm done.
Thank you very much. I sincerely appreciate your input. Moving on, Mark, can I ask you to pronounce your last name so that I don't make a hash of it?
DeLeo.
DeLeo. Mark DeLeo, I understand that you're also going to be speaking to the Cedar Hill school proposal.
I would like to, yes. Thank you. And thank you for allowing me to speak. Thanks for all the work that you do on this. Yeah, I'm a little bit aghast as well. 9 months ago, the steering committee for the Cedar Hill build recommended not putting a trades related shop in there and replacing it with a makerspace. And I think makerspaces are great, but makerspaces do not train students in any way that is going to help us with our current crisis, our current housing crisis. And I think we need a trades related shop, whether it's woods or metals or both at Cedar Hill. I think we need a trades related shop in every middle school in our district, because the beautiful thing about a shop in a middle school is every student in that middle school gets an experience for 2 months with their hands on using these tools and experiencing success, not just in a non-academic field, which is great, but in a way that is designed to help them move into a trades related shop in the high school, and from there actually graduate and help us solve real world problems like a housing shortage that we have. Canada, out of all of the G7 countries, has the least number of privately owned homes. Our housing crisis is real, and we experience it all the time. And if we are building new middle schools that are dissociated from the real world crisis all around us, it just makes no sense to me. I am a woodshop teacher here in SD61. I've been teaching woodworking for 10 years. And we just had a change of term a week ago. And just in summary, I brought a number of students just to the front. I said, how did you experience this woodworking term? And there was a number of kids who said, well, I know what I'm going to be doing a lot more of in high school. And these were kids that 2 months earlier at the beginning of the term had no woodworking experience and probably had no desire to take woodworking in secondary school. So I see all of the time that students come in middle school and get a taste for this woodworking trades-related program and desire more of that in secondary school. And so I think we actually owe it to the taxpayers who are funding this school to be promoting trades that are relevant to helping us with our current housing crisis. I think to not have a trades-related shop in the new Cedar Hill build would be irresponsible of us, considering what's going on all around us. So that's all I want to say. But we've been trying to push back on this for 9 months and haven't gotten anywhere. So certainly there's a number of us teachers who are starting to feel really frustrated of like, really, like this just seems like a really big thing. You can't just take a trades-related shop, make it a makerspace, and think that you're accomplishing the same thing. It's not the same thing being accomplished at all. So thank you for the opportunity to present. I deeply appreciate it.
And thank you, Mark, and thank you, Colin, for both for the time to share your perspectives on this. It'll be valuable consideration for the board moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to a staff presentation. We have Information Technology for Learning Department update from our very own Director of Information Technology, Andy Canty.
Thank you very much, Chair Painter. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to share my screen here and share a few slides with you, give you an update from our department. Okay, you should be seeing the PowerPoint slide now. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Andy Canty. As you know, I'm the Director of IT for Learning. And the first thing I wanted to let both the new trustees, new stakeholders, and all members present was just what a fabulous team we have. We really do have an amazing team in the IT for Learning department. And it's not just me saying that. We get approached a lot by other districts for consultation. We get approached by the Ministry of Education for pilot initiatives and second opinions. And we're really fortunate that we've built a very strong team here in Victoria. So that's the first thing that is most important for you to know. So I wanted to just share a bit of a story around, this is quite a high level introduction to technology at the Greater Victoria School District. And in the future, I'm happy to go deeper into any of these areas. It'd be my pleasure. But I wanted to do this high-level story because we are covering more as a department, more areas than we have in the past. And I think it's important to share that with the team. So did you know there's approximately 20,000 computer devices plus up to 10,000 personal devices that connect to 22,000 network appliances to provide students and staff with internet and data. And just in this picture on the left, you'll see, obviously there's the wireless devices. There's also the tech package, which our partners in facilities have done a fabulous job of standardizing in every classroom. And you can see there's well, you may not be able to see, but there's an Apple TV, there's a digital projector, there's the a wireless access point out of picture. And then on the back end, this is my member of the team, Chris, who's posing with the Chromebooks, and the setup that goes in and to creating this kind of seamless, as far as we can, seamless experience. And I think when it comes to wireless and when it comes to that connectivity, we've done a very good job. But what that takes is a huge amount of infrastructure on the back end. When you multiply all of these tethered, invisible tethers from every appliance back to every network device, to every switch, in every comms closet, in every school, and you start to get a picture of the complexity of the network that the team supports. We also manage our school and district websites in-house, and they're a key communication platform for students, parents, and staff. We currently do this on the WordPress platform, and it's a partnership with the schools and with our communications department. The schools update their own websites, and we help train the staff. We provide Pro-D on QP Pro-D days around getting to know WordPress and how to update the sites. And this has been a really successful initiative. It's aging now. We've had this for a number of years, but it's been running extremely smoothly to this point, but always looking to review and improve. We also are fortunate to do our own in-house development, and there's a number of applications that we have created to support departments and different stakeholders. The most recent large initiative that we launched this September, and this was working with the GVTA subcommittee to develop an in-house digital portfolio solution to replace FreshGrade. This was the company we were using for e-portfolios, digital portfolios, that was actually acquired and closed down the business in BC. So this was a sudden initiative where we had approximately 8 months to spin up a new solution. The team got together. We had fabulous input from teachers, from administrators, and we were able to launch this in September, and it's fast growing in its usage now. This connects back into our Parent Connect portal. So this is serving not only students, but also parents. And there's resources put in behind this around guidelines for use, and to just really get the highest value out of this. What you're seeing here on this slide is where the student can make some customizations to their own portfolio profile. So they can change their image, their background, their color, their theme color. So we try to add some nice touches as well to make it really engaging for students. On our Tech for Learning website, this is where we share knowledge for staff, and you'll see just from this screenshot where it says jump to on the lower half. These are the current areas we're sharing information with staff, where we know staff are reaching out through tickets and through communication with us, what they're looking for information on. So we always try to analyze the tickets coming in and then give back out the information on demand, so that they don't have to wait for somebody to respond on a ticket. Obviously, there are times where we do need help desk support. So there's a big create a new help desk ticket here up on the left. And we keep this site active, put a lot of how-tos, video run-throughs, tutorials, and we have a mechanism for feedback. If anybody from the schools or the departments suggests, hey, wouldn't it be great if, and we always try to listen to that feedback and be very responsive. We also communicate and support staff through an ITL monthly newsletter. And you'll see this if you're an SD61 employee, you'll see this in your inbox every month. And it's for all staff, and it includes all topical. Here's just an example back from in June, where we announced the FreshGrade closure and the new student portfolio tool. And there'll be tech tips. We've had great feedback on this, to the point that some teachers have told us they forward the tech tips to their family because they cover all the broad knowledge. We often use this to share security and privacy knowledge as well. Our student systems and data team support the use of the provincial student information system, My Education BC. And they also support staff with data collections, including the key funding collection, which is 1701. I thought it'd be good for the committee to see just a screenshot of My Education BC, so you know what we're talking about when we say My Ed and what it looks like as a database. Obviously, this is not real student data we're sharing here. And this is actually a still from a series of videos we put online to support educators and clerical staff and administrators in the use of this tool. But you'll see the kinds of modules it covers around their student, staff, attendance, grades, assessment, scheduling. So it's a complex database. It's a provincial database. So we don't actually host the database here in our data center. It's provincially hosted, but locally supported. In the classroom, we support and have done for many years Google Workspace for Education and many other digital apps and tools. I can speak a little more to those in a moment. For staff, we're now standardizing our tool set on Microsoft Teams and Microsoft 365 collaboration suite. And this is to digitize our paper workflows and make information more accessible. So we're taking this slowly. A lot of school districts moved very quickly in this direction during the pandemic. And we're actually speaking with them about their experiences, and really the overriding feedback from the school districts that jumped all in during the pandemic was they wish they had taken it a little slower, looked at the use cases a little more thoroughly, created more support resources. So we're really listening to those experiences, meeting with the schools, meeting with the departments to say, how's this going to help your work? How is this going to streamline your work and make collaborating easier, make access to information easier? We're also looking to support what we're calling a culture of security. This is one slide I could spend an hour on its own, and I assure you I won't, but I would be happy to at any point in time. In fact, our senior cybersecurity analyst and myself just gave a presentation at a conference on this on Friday to other school districts and to the ministry around the work that we've been doing for the past couple of years to become a more mature organization when it comes to cybersecurity. I've put up here cybersecurity is an organization risk, not an information technology project. And when you look at the experiences of school districts such as Regina Public Schools, we were all thinking of them in June when they were attacked and subject to ransomware, and many of their services were offline pretty much for the whole month. And it was a painful time because we were kind of willing them back online as soon as possible, but we knew they were going through a very challenging school end of year. So there's some very real use cases we can look to now around the impacts of ransomware and other attacks, and just how it can impact the school community. Projects that we have brought in to mitigate against this are multi-factor authentication, MFA, for all staff. We've tried to make this very easy as possible by using something called conditional access. This means if we know who you are, you're using a district device, you might be at one of our schools or one of our department sites, we're not going to ask you to do multi-factor authentication. We trust who you are, you're here in person. This is really to catch those attempted logins from all around the world that are malicious. And it's done a great job to bring those numbers of attacks down. We've also put a great deal of effort into phishing and malware mitigation, both through education and through responding very quickly as soon as we see this phishing or malware come through. And we have an internal process where staff submit to an email address to immediately notify us of when they see phishing or malware. And then we're currently working through a significant network re-architecture, something we're calling network segmentation. And this is very much in the background. It's not impacting staff on the front end, but what it's doing is it's putting our services into, let's call them locked boxes, so that if one of those services happens to get compromised, the attacker will not be able to move to another service. I'll give an example of this. I mentioned our WordPress websites. Say, for example, Perisher thought that our WordPress was compromised. This network segmentation project makes it much harder to move from WordPress to the data center and to the databases, for example. So there's a lot of work happening around hardening our network and making our network more secure. Privacy and data governance is also an area we've really grown as a department. We undertake assessments of third-party apps, not just on how they perform like the old days, does it run on Windows, does it run on Mac, but now it's, no, what's the privacy policy? What's the use of data? How do staff or students or parents ask for their data to be deleted? When was their privacy policy last updated? We have a whole checklist of questions to do a privacy scan of third-party vendors and applications. We created informed consent tools informed consent forms for digital tools, so that parents can either grant consent or deny consent to use tools in the classroom that we're not hosting. Same for high school students, so they can self-consent. We've introduced web application best practices. Database security review is underway, similar to what I mentioned, the network segmentation. We do the same at the database level, ensuring that databases cannot talk to each other. And we really support and promote a privacy and security by design model. And what this means is, it's too late if the project's been defined, the budget's been secured, the application has been acquired, and then somebody says, oh, hang on a sec, we should look at this from a privacy and security point of view. That's not privacy and security by design. We need to be asking these questions before it even gets to the project stage. So right at the project initiation, any new idea that involves new technology, it could be a device, could be an application, we need to scan it from a privacy and security point of view, and then be a part of that project, regardless of whether it's coming out of our department or not. And so we're working very closely with facilities, as you can imagine, with energy management systems, and we're working with schools who are interested in using new digital tools in their school, and really trying to be there at the starting conversation. Another growth area for us is data analytics and reporting. We provide dynamic information in dashboards related to FESL, the Framework for Enhancing Student Learning. Sorry, typo there. I'll correct that before I share the slides. And student data to inform decision-making and supports. We're also working with our Indigenous Education Department to support the local education agreements and the information that we can share as a part of those agreements. And like the Ministry of Education, we have a strategy to build out these dashboards in a platform called Power BI. It's another Microsoft platform, and it's been very popular because of partly its integration with the other Microsoft tools. Also, it actually looks a little like Excel, so there's a lot of familiarity with it. And other school districts are using this also, and we're able to start to share templates and ideas with each other. So a lot of potential there. And on the right is an example of Power BI. It's actually not one of our dashboards. There was nothing I was really able to share that was in the public domain yet, because it's all behind credentials. So this is just a sample example of what Power BI looks like. And then one of the things we noticed is if I think the comment was made that the word technology is not in our strategic plan, and that's fine. We don't want it to be. We're very much running in the background, but the phrases that are in our strategic plan as an organization are develop and support, engage and collaborate, critically examine. Straight away, critically examine, you think about data analytics and how we can support that goal, learning opportunities and addressing the inequity. All of these things stand out as areas where we as a department believe we are supporting the school district in their strategic goals. And then this slide, it's too much, and it's too much to go through right now. I'm not expecting everybody to go through it. I'm not going to go through it bit by bit, but I like to share this as an overview of the areas that information technology now touches and what we have to do to organize all of these touch points. And this is a framework that allows a professional in IT to really look at each of these areas and self-assess and say, okay, are there any gaps? Obviously, this is not education focused, so we have the added context of the classroom and supporting education, but this gives you a good picture of strategy and governance. What are our next steps? What have we done in that area? What's our financial management? We're coming into budget discussions. Our most important there in the purple, people and resources. How are we supporting our staff? How are we supporting the staff outside of the department? So I'll leave this with you, and this will be part of the handout as well. So that happy to answer any questions on infrastructure, security, etc. And then my final slide, I mentioned the budget discussions are pending. Funding is required, and I'd like to state that very clearly, that to continue this growth in terms of the breadth of what we're covering as a department and to sustain the technology we're supporting, funding is required, and we'll be bringing forward much more data and information when it comes to the budget conversations. In the old days, we used to keep a spare on the shelf, and we were incredibly resourceful, like every school district, and we would honestly run technology into the ground. These switches in the walls and routers in the comms closet, they run and run and run until they die, or, you know, they have in the past, they've had a very long shelf life. The security requirements have meant a complete change to that approach. We now need more robust lifecycle management. We need to be able to replace these on a cycle, keep them patched, keep them secure in a way that we've never had to in the past. We've also seen significant cost increases due to the pandemic-related global supply chain. And these issues mean that hardware costs have jumped nearly 20% in the last year. Projects we'll be bringing forward that require financial support. Teacher classroom computers are very much at their very end. We talk about getting the most out of technology. We have very much got the most out of our teacher classroom computers, and they need replacing urgently. Student devices, we're talking Chromebooks, iPads, laptops, network technology infrastructure. We're moving into year 3 of 5. New telecom systems for schools. This will be a joint project with facilities to upgrade from our old analog phone systems to a modern digital voice system. And security and privacy resources. One of the new initiatives we've been made aware of is that every school district must now come forward with a privacy management program. So we're building that out, and we'll have a clearer picture of what that might mean from a resourcing point of view as well. So thank you so much for listening. This is my last slide. Happy to answer any questions now or at a later date. Very passionate about this, and would really appreciate the support and the understanding of the different areas that we touch as a department.
Thank you very much, Andy. And as always, your presentations are a mix of bewildering and exciting. And clearly, we've got a couple of questions coming forward. I'll start with Trustee Duncan and then over to Tracy Humphreys.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Andy, for your presentation. I look forward to delving into the slides in a little more detail, and I appreciate you putting them together for us. Obviously, some really exciting things happening, and I have to comment on how far things have evolved. Yeah, I think back to 2018 when I kind of first joined our team, and so hats off to you and to the team for all the amazing work that you're doing and that you're planning to do. I'm looking forward to seeing how some of the data analytics evolves in terms of how that might support board governance and our tracking of are our strategies and working to improve student needs, to increase student achievement. I must say I have to comment on budget and life cycle management. I know that we are not the only school district that is going to be faced with significant costs associated with both upgrading our network infrastructure, but also managing something as simple as laptops or Chromebooks, which have become increasingly disposable. And so I'm wondering to what extent the province is indicating their willingness to step up and provide some leadership, both on the, from the perspective of the power of provincial procurement to their ability to assist all school districts across the province with procuring these kinds of items, and also their willingness to step up and acknowledge that in light of inflationary pressures, cost pressures, that school districts really are not positioned with the current budgets that we receive to make these huge investments, which undoubtedly are necessary, but we really have very few tools in order to accomplish some of these lofty goals. So those are my questions to start, and thank you again for your time tonight, Andy.
Thank you. Through the chair. I think I would need to follow up on provincial initiatives. I know there's a lot of conversations happening and renewals of agreements. I am the chair of the Provincial Technology Advisory Committee. So I hear a number of conversations around standardization of procurement, and I hope that's fruitful for all of us, that we can see these costs come down as a collective unit would be excellent. And thank you for your other feedback. I will need to follow up on your questions, Trustee Duncan.
Moving on to Tracy Humphreys and then Trustee Kwan.
Thank you. That was a really informative presentation, as always. And I was particularly interested in the cybersecurity aspect of things because I've been wondering about that for some time. It's really great to see that we're on the cutting edge of that. That makes me feel very comfortable. And I really appreciated seeing the parent support hub, because I didn't know how to log into my parent account because I recently came out of being in private education with my daughter for 7 years, and just haven't had time to ask anybody, how do I, actually look at all this stuff. So I'm all logged in. I did it while you were presenting. Thank you. And my other question is just about technology I'm very fortunate to be able to present with my BC Ed Access hat on to the UVic Tech Ed classes every year. And so we talk about education technology in terms of supporting students with disabilities. And so I was just I'm interested to hear how we're doing with accessibility technology. And one of the things that I talk about to this class every time is that they need to seek out the person in their school or in their district, because I do this presentation at a number of different universities and colleges, the person who is that expert, the knowledge keeper, and I'm just curious, in this district, is there actually a role for that in schools, or is it the district team that they would go to?
Through the chair, thank you so much for the feedback. I'll share it with the team, and thank you for the question. I didn't put it in the presentation because it's more kind of internal process, but I think it's good to share that as part of our department professional development, I believe it's in 2 weeks' time, we're taking our team over to Quadra Warehouse to meet with a number of teachers around assistive technology to do a refresher on the different devices and the different applications that are used to support, because the touch point for that support is our school technologists, which is our team, hands and feet out in the schools. And it had naturally, a member of staff had naturally kind of taken on a lot of that work through just being very passionate about it, who actually moved on to another position. And we felt it was a really good opportunity to bring newer members of the team now up to speed again. So my colleague Josh Barks has been working with Sean McCartney and Pam Howson to arrange this professional development opportunity for the team. So hopefully out of that, we can continue to support accessibility.
That sounds great. And if there's any opportunity for me to come, let me know. I'd love to see that.
I will follow up. Thank you.
Thanks.
Trustee Kwan?
Okay. First of all, through the chair, Andy, thank you so much for that presentation. Really great information in there. I can't wait to dive in a little bit more and explore. Just a quick question, kind of on the same kind of tail end of what Trustee Duncan was asking, as far as the need for increased funding, the need for increased resources there. Do we at present, is there anything available that we can apply for as far as grants go or anything like that? Not just through the ministry, but through other resources. Do we do anything like that? Do you know of anything that's available?
Through the chair, I'm wondering if Secretary Treasurer Stride may have more information, because it often comes through the Secretary Treasurer's office.
I think that's actually a really good question. At the moment, I'm not aware of any other grants for technology outside of the Ministry of Education, but certainly something we should just keep in mind. Sometimes we see things come through the federal government, not the province. So definitely we'll keep that question in mind as we look to find funding for all of these projects.
That's great. Thanks to both of you.
And if I may follow up, one of the things we see when we are fortunate to have an injection of funds, and we saw this with the federal funding post-pandemic, much of that went towards accessibility to devices, technology in the classroom. And so the work we now do in the background is to ensure that in 5 years, say, are we able to sustain that new technology that's been injected in? So that's the project that happens on the back end, on the organization side, when we're fortunate to get this one-time funding. Is if it's one-time funding, but we want the service to repeat, then we've got to come up with a plan to either increase our internal funding to meet the replacement cost when it happens. So that's the work that we're looking forward to talking about with the budget stakeholders.
Trustee Duncan?
Yeah, just briefly, if I might, Chair, and it's not really this may be a question for Andy, but just a thought that I hope we can explore further through maybe one of our ad hoc committees. But just in terms of, again, going back to this idea of life cycle, and as we replace and increasingly short life cycles that we're seeing with certain devices in particular. As we replace those, I hope that we also think about the end of life, requirements, whether that be responsibly disposing of it, recycling it, or maybe even reusing it, but in a different context, whether it's through donations and the like. But at some point it'd be great to talk about that, and maybe our climate committee could look at that as part of our climate action plan, because I know we literally have tens of thousands of devices, and when they do reach the end of their lives, we have to think, where do they go? But yeah, thanks again, Andy.
Okay, Andy, not quite off the hook because I had a question or two as well. One of the things that came to mind for me is just thinking back to previous conversations that have occurred with respect to teachers using their initiative to use apps in their classroom that haven't necessarily been vetted before. And so I was just wondering, on the backside of the parent page, do we have a fairly robust system now of where teachers can fairly quickly get the thumbs up or thumbs down on items?
Yes, thank you for the question. Very much so. We've come a long way on that. We have a request process where a teacher can complete a very short form of the app they would like to use and why they would like to use it. It goes through this privacy scan process and a security scan, actually, from a technical point of view, just to ensure that we understand where the data resides and all the questions we need to know. We then create, if it requires consent, we create an informed consent letter, which goes into Parent Connect for parents, and the teacher can actually initiate that communication with parents, so they can choose the app from an internal application we developed to say if it's a classroom that's not using Google Workspace, they'll choose that application and notify their parent community that there's this online form to either grant consent or deny consent, and then they'll have access to view the students in their classroom who are consented to use a certain application. It sounds complicated. It's actually quite a slick process that we've had very little issues with since we've rolled it live.
No, really happy to hear that. It doesn't surprise me at all that you've generally been about 5 steps ahead of my thinking. So this is, one more example. The other one I was thinking about is that I feel very positive about your comments on data analytics. I think there is a ton of information to be gained from exploring that. But one of the things I didn't see in the list of new expense items would be actually having an analyst in there, someone who has the skill set to be able to look into this. Is that something you're envisioning as well, or is this going to be more staff or more tasks for the same staff?
Thank you. That was not an exclusive list. There are many areas we're hoping to discuss going forward. We do have some excellent staff right now who are very data literate and our data analysts on the team. We're fortunate to have staff, but as this grows, we can see needing to resource that, absolutely, both from a staffing and from a licensing point of view.
Thanks very much, Andy. I don't see anything else, so thank you very much for your presentation. As always, very interesting, very engaging. We're going to move along to the superintendent's report. Superintendent Whitten.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Painter. There isn't anything in this section C, but I will be coming back in section E, E3, and E4. So,
thank you, Superintendent. I take it then we can skip past D as well, personnel. All right, moving along to E, finance and legal affairs. Starting off with E1, the monthly financial report, October 2022.
I can jump in on that. So the first item, monthly financial report, is in the agenda package on page 10. And what this report is, it provides the actual revenue and expenses at October 31st. in the current year and in the prior year. The budget that's showing there in the current year is the preliminary budget. So the budget that was approved by the board in April, plus any changes that have been made since then. The budget in the prior year in this report will depend whether or not the report was run in the previous year. So when creating this one, we didn't do an October report. So the budget that is there is actually the report that was at the end of last year. So just keep that in mind. Going forward, we're going to run the report at month end, so it shouldn't be an issue. Basically, the main purpose of this report is to provide year-to-date actuals compared to the budget in the current year. And then you can see how much budget is still available. The prior year is there for comparison, but just keep in mind that we may have made some changes in how we're budgeting or what our revenue and expenses are between the 2 years. The revenue for October 2022 is 71% compared to 70% last year. And for expenditures, we're at 76%. And last year was at 77. So we're very comparable to the prior year. And I won't go into any of the details. There's a lot there, but if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them, or else you're also welcome to just send me off an email if you are interested in learning more about what's in each of those lines, or if you have any questions, then you're welcome to do that. Okay. So do you want me to move on?
Yes, let's move on to budget change report. I know I had a couple of questions and it kind of tied the two together. So that's to hear your presentation first.
All right. So the budget change report, we bring this to the board every month, and at the top of the report is basically what the budget was that was approved by the board. And then the section that you would normally focus on is the section called changes, amended budget. And that's where we would document any of the bigger changes that have happened since the preliminary budget was approved. And there's a revenue column and an expense column. Most of the items that we add have both. So if we're, for example, if we're adding in crossing guard contributions, there's going to be crossing guard expenses. So that's why you see numbers in both columns in this case. The new items that were added for October start at the additional elementary strings donation, which is $250, and below that. So we got some miscellaneous donations and revenues. We've added in cafeteria revenue to date. We received some donations for the Cooper Smith Music Library collection. And then we have received some of the contributions from municipalities for crossing guards. So those are the new items that have come in. On the special purpose, the only thing that has changed from last time is there is a new French Immersion Growth Initiatives grant for $75,000. And no new changes on the capital fund. I don't know if you have any questions about that report.
Any questions? Seeing none, I'll ask for just a bit of clarification, just to make sure I'm trying to get my head around the cafeteria, for example, 100,000 in and out,
Yeah.
but I'm just trying to make sense of this in light of what it showed on line 645 in the prior pages. It looked about 30,000. So
Yeah.
What are the two numbers telling me?
Okay, I can explain that. So when we create the preliminary budget, we estimated that we would have 100,000 in revenue coming in through the cafeteria. But operationally, so when we give those budgets out, we don't want to give them 100,000 in budget and have them spend it. We kind of pull it out. And then as they earn cafeteria revenue, we match it with a revenue budget and expense budget. So they're only spending what they collect in the cafeteria as they go along. And hopefully they'll hit 100,000 because that's what we ultimately budgeted. But it's just a way of making sure that the budget that's in their accounts reflects what's actually been collected throughout the year.
So if I understand it, it basically are they provided with a certain amount of seed money to start with to, purchase materials, and then they build from that? Or
Yes, some schools will have funds that they've carried over from the year before, because they are allowed to carry over a certain dollar amount. So some will have some in their cafeteria accounts. But basically whatever they sell, they can use to offset the costs. So they'll buy the food that they sell from the money that they collect in sales. I don't believe that there is a budget that's provided over and above that.
in practical purposes, though, are they actually generating revenue that would go anywhere except, into the program?
No, probably not.
Okay.
I could double check that, but I can't
No,
say
no.
that I've seen big transfers out of the cafeteria to anything else.
No, I was just trying to make sense of what the revenue generation on the initial page actually meant, and what the significance of seeing it again here were. The one other question I had was the Pacifica quitclaim. I think it showed up on the last line somewhere.
Yeah, it's on the capital sheet in
On local capital. So it's currently in local capital, and that's all there is to it
yes,
at this point?
capital, and that's the one, if you remember, the board approved to return back to a technology device replacement.
Okay. And then my last question, on the revenue summary page, we have interest, and I made the snap to assume that this was interest that was accruing from provincial funds that we haven't drawn on just yet, if I recall from the past. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And what is the current interest rate on that?
So as of the end of October, so I think we have 3 different cash balances that earn interest, but I think you're thinking of the one that we have on deposit with the ministry.
Yes, that's the one I was thinking of.
Yeah, so when we ended the end of last year was at 0.95%. And at the end of October, it was up to 4.45%. So quite a significant increase since the end of the year. What will happen, because you see that our budget is too low when you look at the monthly financial report.
Mhm.
So when we do our final budget, we're going to redo those estimates and use the newer rates and make an assumption as to what those rates will be to the end of the year. And then you'll see that budget for interest and investment revenue go up.
Okay, thank you very much. Trustee Kwan.
Thank you, Chair. I actually was hoping the Secretary Treasurer, Katrina, could just explain a little bit with regards to that amended budget change in enrollment adjustment. It says in miscellaneous revenue, and the enroll will be recalculated in December.
Yes. So when the budget was approved in April, the board took a chance and said, we think that enrollment's going to be up by, I can't remember how many FTE, but the equivalent was 324,000 in revenue. And so when we did our preliminary budget, we couldn't change the actual operating grant because it's calculated by the ministry based on the submission that we make to them in February. And so we stuck it in miscellaneous revenue. So it's just sitting there, and what will happen when the ministry gives us our recalculated grant, we'll see that money flip up into the block funding based on enrollment. Yeah, so it's sort of just like a holding place for it, making sure we had that extra revenue in there to balance the budget.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And just checking back in, any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Secretary Treasurer. And we move along to E3, Student and Family Affordability Fund update.
Great. Thank you. This would be me. So you will see in your pack-up on page 16 a memo, and the intent of the memo is to provide more information regarding the Student Family Affordability Fund, and the memo included information about the allocation formula, which you can see there. 3 sets of information was used to determine the allocations to the schools. One was that the principals provided information with their ranked priorities. They had conversations with school-based team as well as PACs and teachers and historical knowledge. So they ranked the priorities based on what they saw the need in their school around, was it number 1 food or supplies or fees or transportation? So 33.3% of the funds allocated to the school came from that area. The next 33% came from information that the principals provided regarding how many families that they felt that they would be supporting this year. And that was an incremental number. So it wasn't historical in that they had supported a certain number and that would continue. It was increased based on who they felt would also require support. And the last was information we receive every year regarding the vulnerability index. So that was applied to all schools. We use that index when we allocate for community link funding. And so we used it in this situation as well. And you can see the total allocations. So from the smallest school that we have in the district was $14,520 they received, all the way up to an equity seeking secondary school that received $87,478. So all schools received funding. The lowest amount was the $14,520 and the highest amount was the $87,478. In addition to that, funds were allocated to Indigenous Education Department, and that will be supporting the 4 houses, Esquimalt and Songhees Nations, as well as Métis and urban Indigenous people. And we have allocated a small amount of money to the Welcome and Learning Center that we have operating here at the Talmy building. We have many families that are coming through, and so we're providing some support, whether it be transportation or some supplies as they enter into the schools, or some food as they come forward. And you will see there, again, just a reminder on how that funds can be used, or what areas the funds can be used for. And lastly, the memo speaks to the reporting requirements that we have. So there is an interim report that we'll be providing to the ministry in January, and an end of year one in July 2023. Happy to answer any questions, or happy to leave that there.
Okay, questions from, new face in the crowd. Trustee Gagnon, start with you.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the superintendent. Just looking for a little bit of clarity about the allocation for the smallest school. Is that smallest school based on just the allocation amount? Is that based on enrollment figures? Just what is the definition of smallest school there?
Thank you, Trustee Gagnon. In this instance, it is actually the smallest enrolling school we have in the district. In the example of the equity seeking secondary school, it's not actually the largest by enrollment, but it is an equity seeking school. So yes, they received, the smallest school has the fewest enrolled.
Thank you very much.
And Trustee Duncan, and then Tracy Humphreys.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Superintendent Whitten, for providing this very comprehensive update. It's great, I think, for folks to know all the work and thought that's gone behind how to allocate this out to our district. I wonder, I just wanted to confirm firstly that there will be additional reporting provided to the board through the committee after we receive the interim reports, and then at the end when we review the final expenses. Great.
Yes.
And then wonderful, thanks. And then I just wanted to confirm in terms of some of the funds that were allocated to the 4 houses, did we share requirements in terms of sort of how to share that out? So did we share the ministry direction to us about how the funds should be spent?
Yes, so we met a few times over Zoom with the 4 houses and then individually with each of them and talked about the spending allocation. And that I think has happened at least 2 or 3 times. So they've received the information with regards to how the funds can be spent. So they know the parameters.
Wonderful. Thanks again. Really appreciate it.
Tracy.
Thank you. Thanks, Deb. And you got my email asking questions about this, and I hadn't read the agenda yet, so I apologize, but I do appreciate the breakdown that you sent because that's going to be helpful for when we have our meeting. As parents have been asking about how, specifically the funds have been allocated, and I'm glad to see the interim reporting that will happen as well, because it's more a curiosity. One of the questions that some PACs had was that some of this funding is the same as funding that PACs are providing to schools right now, and so just a little bit of and it's not really necessarily your question to answer, but maybe whether there can be any kind of reallocation of things so that maybe they could use some of that funding on other projects that don't fit into this, if they don't need to use it all. You understand what I mean, right? So that they could use it, the schools could use it to support the families, and maybe there are other things that don't quite fit into the vulnerability piece that some of those other funds could be put to instead.
So thank you, Tracy. Just to be clear, PACs could provide the funding for different things, and they
do provide a lot of funding for some of these things already.
Yes, but moving forward, then as long as we as the schools are providing the funding that meets the parameters of this student and family affordability fund, that sits in there, but PACs probably will be able to look to supplement in different ways that maybe they weren't able to. But for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one and this will be a follow-up later. I don't think it's one could be answered right now, but the reference to the Community Link Vulnerability Index brought to mind conversations that we had probably a couple of years ago now about some sort of inequitable aspects of the existing school district model that we had for allocating community link funds. And I understood that there was going to be a renewed model that would address one of the concerns, which was that the existing model allocated funds on a school level, and as a consequence was missing out on pockets of vulnerable students in some of the non-equity seeking schools, and that we were going to do something about addressing that. I was just wondering if we could raise that matter in an upcoming meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Chair Painter. I think there's 2 things that I can mention, and Deputy Superintendent Caldwell has this portfolio as community link, but 2 things. One is that, yes, we absolutely recognize that there are students who can use support in all schools. So regardless of whether they're a community link school or they're what we term as a not community link school, we recognize that. And that's why one of the things was that this formula was applied to all 48 schools. It wasn't just to the community link schools, but all. And there's also, there are youth and family counselors that are attached to every family of schools, because there are some families of schools that do not have community link schools within them. And so that funding for those youth and family counselors come from community link, and they are there to support students in those schools that are not community link schools. So again, there are ways with which support is going into a non-community link school.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, moving on to what I know will be a benign conversation. E4, Cedar Hill Middle School design approval.
Chair.
Chair Painter, sorry.
Sorry.
I was just actually gonna ask if it would be possible to perhaps maybe have just a 5-minute bio break before we dive into this. I know there's probably going to be a lot of questions, and as you said, not as such a benign issue we're going into or something we need to discuss. So hoping that maybe we could just have a 5-minute break.
That sounds great. With any questions? Okay, with the committee. Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, just I'll move that motion. Great suggestion.
Okay, committee members, all in favor? Okay, I propose that rather than complicating matters significantly, we'll be back at 8. Well, it's 8:27 right now, according to mine. So 8:32, we will start again. Just turn off your cameras and your mics. We won't shut everything off and try to start up again. All right. Thank you. Monday night, my one day of the week that I drink coffee after 6. Okay. Well, with that in mind, I call the meeting to order. And Cedar Hill Middle School design approval. And I will pass this on to Superintendent Whitten.
Thank you. Thank you again, Chair Painter. I will ask Andy just to load up the PowerPoint, and while he's doing that, I will bring your attention to the memo that's provided to you on page 17 of the pack-up. And again, the intent of the memo is just to sort of highlight some of the areas that will be discussed this evening, point out some of the information and the work that has gone in so far to this project, included in the presentation this evening. And I'll just forward to the next slide. And I will acknowledge the territories of the Esquimalt and Songhees nations. We're very fortunate and privileged to do our work, to live, learn, and to meet this evening. So again, with privilege, we'll move to the next slide. So this evening, we'll hear from a number of people. We've had a wide team looking at this from its inception all the way until today. So throughout the presentation, we'll hear about the capital planning. That includes also the timelines that have occurred and ones that we're looking forward to in the future, the current state of the building and where we are at with our planning, as well as the funding application options. We'll speak about the enrollment considerations that we have and the design process, the phases, the consultation, and the features of the new school. Including in that is the accessibility options that are in this design, the 21st century design elements that are in alignment with the redesigned curriculum. So as we move from the school that was built as a junior high into a purpose-built middle school, we also look at that through the lens of the redesigned curriculum, safety for students and staff as we look at this Cedar Hill, which was originally built in 1931 and had an addition in 1975 with a FCI of 0.82, when our new school's facility condition index are zeros. That's our goal. And as well as just the 5 blocks that have been identified as H1 and where the new build will put all students and staff in a safe, all blocks will be safe. Also the net zero energy ready by design. This supports the board motions from June 24th, 2019, and also the November 22nd, 2021 motion, which was directing staff to incorporate net zero into the design of the new Cedar Hill Middle School. So it's a fulsome presentation, which we hope gives you a full picture of where we were, where we have been, and where we hope to be headed, and where we're at with enrollment and future projections. So I'll get Andy to move to the next slide.
Hi, it's Maura Cunningham here. I'm the manager of major capital projects here at the ministry and at the school district, and I'm going to be kind of sharing the screen here with Marnie, so bear with us here. I'm going to talk a bit about the project process of gaining an approval with the ministry. Gaining the approval for funding for a capital project starts with the provincial capital planning process and the school district's 5-year annual capital plan submission. Every year, the school district submits a board-approved capital plan to the Ministry of Education and Childcare. This slide illustrates the ministry's timeline for these annual submissions and approvals. At the top of the process, at the top of the process, or the government's fiscal year end, which is in late March, early April, the ministry sends out the capital planning instructions to all the school districts in the province, all 60. The school district uses these instructions to build an updated capital plan and achieve board approval. At the end of June, the major capital plan is submitted to the ministry. This is just for our major capital projects such as seismic upgrades, expansions, and replacements, so projects like Cedar Hill. Minor projects that are provided to all school districts on an annual basis are submitted at the end of September. These are projects like roofing or new boilers. Between June and January, the ministry sorts the submissions from all 60 school districts and prioritizes them in order to build their internal 10-year capital plan with the Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Finance receives the capital plans from all eligible ministries, so not just the Ministry of Education, also transportation and many different capital and many different ministries that require capital to do their programs, and they build their internal 10-year capital plan with the Ministry of Finance. And they build their provincial budget, which is finalized in February. In March, the ministry responds back to the school districts, confirming their support for the school districts to build a business case for any future funding decision. Next slide, please, Sandy. So this slide just goes into the approval process a bit deeper. Step 1 and 2 are a refresher from the last slide. So in step 1, the board prioritizes the project on the capital plan. In step 2, the ministry prioritizes the project. This can take a long time depending on the seismic rating of the school, but also how it compares to other seismic replacements and other projects that are submitted within the province. For example, our school district has had Cedar Hill prioritized as a replacement on the capital plan since at least 2004. This is 18 years to get this funding approval. Step 3 and 4, when the ministry supports a seismic project, the school district is asked to develop a business plan, or what the ministry calls a project definition report, or PDR. The PDR usually takes on average about 1 to 2 years. Cedar Hill took almost 3 years to develop and achieve Treasury Board funding approval. The PDR started in August 2018 and was approved July 2021. Step 5, the school district receives funding approval and starts the design. The design started in September 2021 and is nearing completion. It has taken over a year to complete this portion of the project. Step 6, this is the one we haven't moved on to yet, is the process that will require the school district to receive the building permit from Saanich, tender the project, build the school. We would like to complete the school in time for a September 2025 opening. Next slide, please, Andy. So the Ministry of Education and Childcare provides seismic mitigation funding for school facilities identified by the geoscientists of BC. And this is how our project was selected from this list. The ministry is particularly concerned with facilities with an 8-ton seismic rating. This is a designation given to schools that are at the highest risk of widespread damage or structural failure during a seismic event. These schools will not be repairable after a significant earthquake. Our school district has 30 facilities that are currently identified as H1 with H1 blocks. Cedar Hill has 5 H1 blocks, so the majority of the school has the highest risk of structural failure during an earthquake. Seismic funding is allocated by the ministry to make schools safe. This usually doesn't include improvements to the condition of the school. Cedar Hill has been approved as a replacement because it is seismically vulnerable, but also because it is in very poor condition. Currently, there are 250 schools in BC that require seismic upgrades. We are very fortunate to receive this funding. Budgets in government are very stretched, and over the last year, there have been multiple deferrals of large seismic replacement projects in the lower mainland. This has allowed the ministry to reallocate these budgets to address more schools in a more timely manner. Next slide, please. This slide's just a couple of facts. The original school was built in 1931 with 7 subsequent additions, with the last addition in 1975.
The building has 5 H1 blocks, 2 H2 blocks, and 2 H3 blocks. The facility condition index of the current school is 0.81, which is double the provincial average, which shows the poor condition of the school. There are many older systems, such as older roofs, older windows, floors, plumbing, heating, electrical, and the list goes on, all that need replacing, with a deferred maintenance cost at almost $11 million for this single school. A seismic upgrade of the current school would not address any of these poor conditions of any of the systems, nor the hazardous materials within the current school. Next slide, please. This is just a current photo, I guess you could say, of the school. It shows the original 1931 block with the 7 subsequent additions. So next slide, please. This slide shows the existing floor plan with the 7 subsequent additions around the original 1931 block. The many additions make for a very dysfunctional floor plan with space that is not being fully utilized. The current classrooms range in size from 54 square meters to 106 square meters. The elevator is not centrally located, thus accessibility throughout is not optimal, with long travel times and ramps throughout. This school has lead and asbestos throughout, with older windows, and a portion of the school has periodic water infiltration during winter months. This school is extremely costly to maintain and has a higher than normal utility costs. It should also be pointed out that there is no opportunity for a future addition within this existing floor plan. Next slide, please.
So this slide looks at and I hope you can see it. People are kind of in the way of the full slide, but it illustrates the options that we looked at in the business case for our approval with the ministry. So our business case went to the ministry for funding approval, and it explored 4 options. The first option was a phased seismic upgrade. In this option, the students would stay in the school while it was upgraded 1 block at a time. It would require portables and would take much longer to complete. The end product would be a school that only addresses the seismic. It would not address the poor condition or hazardous materials. It would continue to cost a lot to maintain and operate. It would not address the accessibility issues with the existing school, and it would not accommodate a future addition. The second option we looked at was an unphased seismic upgrade. In this option, the students would be moved to SD Willis, which would speed up the seismic upgrade. This option would cost almost as much as the replacement, and the end product would be the same as option 1. So would not address the poor condition, would cost a lot, continue to cost a lot to maintain and operate, would not address accessibility, and would not accommodate an addition. Option 3 was a partial replacement, partial upgrade. It was the highest cost option, and some of the blocks would have remained at seismic risk. As such, this option was eliminated. And option 4 was the full replacement. It was the school district's recommended option to the ministry, and it was approved by the ministry for the following reasons. A new school would address the high seismic risk, making this a safe school, while also addressing the poor condition. Every part of the school would be new. There would be no hazardous materials left in the school. It would be fully accessible. It would be the greenest school in the district with low operating costs, and it could be added to with an addition in the future. Next slide, please.
Excuse me, Maura, just so you know, you're much clearer when you're talking closer to the microphone and closer to Marnie.
Thanks, Andy. Are you having problems hearing?
I'll go to the next slide. Yeah.
Thank you. So this goes over our capital project funding agreement, or what the ministry calls our CPFA. So in July 2021, the ministry approved option 4, the seismic replacement, and the school district and ministry signed an agreement outlining the approved scope, schedule, and benefits. This agreement, called the CPFA, the school district to deliver the project as laid out in the agreement. Any changes?
My apologies. Can we try to adjust the mic just a little bit more?
Sure.
I'm sorry, coming through very garbled.
Yeah, unfortunately, my advice didn't help. So I'm not
maybe
sure
we can turn it up.
if anything is pushing against. Is it a laptop you're presenting from?
It is a laptop. Is that better?
That sounds much clearer.
Okay. The project scope outlined in the agreement is for a replacement of the school with NLC funding and a low carbon design. The capacity of the replacement is the same as the current school at 575 seats. The ministry area standards dictates that the allowable space for a 575 capacity middle school is 5,383 meters squared. The project schedule is also outlined in the agreement. This schedule has been adjusted to account for the longer design development that has taken place on the project so far. The ministry is aware of the extended schedule through our monthly meetings, and the school district will need to submit a formal letter outlining the new schedule when we go for tender, pre-tender and tender award, once the contract schedule is confirmed with the, what's called the, whoever we end up going with to build the school. Design development has taken much longer due to the redesign required to get the project within budget. This has pushed our occupancy of the new school from January 2025 to September 2025. Any further delay in today's heated construction market is adding more cost and more time to the project. Next slide, please.
Okay, this slide just lays out the funding allocated towards the project. So the ministry has approved $18 million towards the construction costs, 9.1 million towards soft costs, which cover items such as design fees and municipal fees. The ministry holds a further funding that the school district must apply for as the project progresses. The supplemental items such as the risk items and economic adjustment require ministry approval with documents that substantiate the need. The supplemental funding for 8.3 million includes the NLC funding. The Board of Education has contributed 3.6 towards the construction budget and a further 538,000 for the solar installation to ensure a net zero energy ready design. The total potential funding for the project is of just a little over $47 million. Next slide, please. Okay, so the current project is approved for a seismic replacement with a capacity of 575 students. The expansion funding to increase the capacity is a separate funding envelope that the school district must place on the 5-year capital plan. The 10-year enrollment was not forecasted to be over 575 capacity until recently. Based on current forecast enrollment the school district just received, with the known developments around the area, the school district could request expansion funding for a 100-seat addition on the 2024-25 5-year annual capital plan that is approved by the board in this May of 2023. The current design allows for an expansion on the northwest side of the new school. Next slide, please.
So this is a slide that looks at all of the approval processes we've completed so far with the ministry. We've been meeting with the ministry on a bi-weekly basis and working to get the project through all of the ministry checkpoints. Here's the milestones that we've achieved so far. We had the school seismically assessed and added to the ministry seismic mitigation list. This happened in the early 2000s. The board prioritized the project on a 5-year annual capital plan submission. The ministry supported the project to move to business case or PDR. The district submitted the business case for the recommended option and the funding approval. The province approved the recommended option as laid out in the business case. The ministry and the school district signed an agreement establishing the scope, schedule, and budget. The ministry has approved the conceptual design, the schematic design, the design development checkpoints to date. The school district worked with the architect and subconsultants to fine-tune the detailed design required to complete the construction drawings and submitted for building permit. Next slide, please. So there are some ministry approval processes to do still. Before we tender the project and when the drawings are 100% complete, we will need to go and get revised costing and submit this to the ministry for approval. If the project is over budget, we will need to perform a value engineering exercise. Once the ministry is satisfied with the costing, they will provide approval to tender the project. Once the project is awarded, the school district can apply for the supplemental items and the economic adjustment funding that Marnie covered in her slide. If needed, the school district can also apply for risk items if we can substantiate them. Usually risk is given at the end of the project once the project costs are fully known. Throughout the project team provides monthly updates on an online tracking document to the ministry. We also are in bi-weekly meetings to document the progress with the ministry. Next slide, please.
As you've heard, there have been significant work completed to date and several more steps in this process to build a modern, safe, and new Cedar Hill Middle School. Along the way, a steering committee has held weekly and moved to bi-weekly meetings that focus on construction, on consultation and design. When decisions were needed, the steering committee engaged with the core committee, which included the superintendent, secretary treasurer, and director of facilities. These decisions were shared with the Board of Education as part of the approval process and will continue to be shared as we move through. Next slide, please.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lisa McPhail. I'm the Communications and Engagement Manager. I just want to spend a little time with you and go over a couple slides to provide a quick overview of the public engagement that has taken place over the past year, and just outline the communication awareness efforts, who we heard from, and how we landed where we are here today. So the school district worked in collaboration with the architectural firm KMBR to formalize the visioning and engagement process. KMBR was key in the development of the business case and design development. They also took a lead in engaging district staff and students at Cedar Hill Middle School to help determine design drivers and what was required for a new middle school build. Key considerations when designing the consultation process included ensuring the district was being transparent and providing the public with good information and multiple opportunities for the public to learn more, ask questions, and provide feedback at different stages of the process, which included pre-design, schematic design, and design development. From the start of the project, the district communicated the scope of the engagement and how and when people could participate in the visioning process. It was very important to foster understanding with the community about what was possible, what was non-negotiable, and where there were opportunities to provide input. A key strategy we used was to utilize different tools, having multiple feedback mechanisms to inform the envisioning process, to reach as many people as possible, and to collect as much valuable information to better understand the needs and the desires of the learning community and the broader community. To help build public understanding of the complexities that come with a new build, each time the district would engage with the public, it would provide background information and tell the community how the feedback was or would be incorporated into the design plans and how the district would be moving forward. In addition, regular updates were provided to the Board of Education at board meetings, including engagement reports to keep them fully apprised and always to close the loop with the community. Next slide, please. So here the engagement process started in fall of 2021, just like Maura and Marnie outlined for us. As previously mentioned, at each step of the process, the community was informed about how they could engage and how they can inform design plans. So here we've just outlined some of the communication tools the district leveraged to help raise awareness with staff, students, and community about upcoming consultative opportunities. Prior to any open house or survey, the district would broadly communicate the opportunity to provide input well in advance. And some of the tools that we used were media releases, letters, advertisements, webinars, and also utilizing our web and social media platforms. And the students at the school, I have to just give them kudos. They were also very helpful in getting the message out, and they would hand deliver invitations to nearby neighbors, community associations, and organizations. And then another key component was that all trustees were invited to attend the info sessions. And for those who could not attend, staff would provide updates at board and committee meetings to keep everyone on the same page. Next slide. This slide outlines the engagement opportunities and techniques that were included in the process. So there were 3 information sessions. One of them was online due to COVID, and the other 2 were in person. But a key factor is that at all stages where we were collecting input, we were really clear with the public how that input was going to be used to inform next steps in the design process. And every effort was put forward to try to meet the needs and desires of the community, of course, within scope of the project and budgetary constraints, etc. What was really exciting is that we heard from more than 600 community members just between the survey and the 3 open houses. It was great. We had KMBR at all the open houses, so they would be able to entertain and answer any questions that were more technical about the project. KMBR was also pivotal in hosting multiple programming workshops for district staff, Cedar Hill Middle School staff and students, and the students at feeder schools. So feeder schools are the elementary schools that will eventually feed into Cedar Hill Middle School. KMBR was also really helpful at facilitating staff tours of other new builds to help generate ideas for team members to get creative in thinking about what they desired in their school, which ultimately informed the design drivers. And in a couple slides from now, the school principal will be able to further describe what happened with the school consultation process. Next slide. This is just a really quick snapshot, an overview essentially of who we heard from. So throughout the process, everyone was invited to participate in the public forums. There were interactions with students, staff, parents, neighbors, alumni, local community associations, and the District of Saanich. When it came to engagement with the Indigenous community, we worked really closely with our Indigenous Ed department, and we continue to work closely with our Indigenous Ed department, who helps to co-create the space and conversations with the 4 houses. And as we continue to activate what it means to be culturally responsive, we do not go in with an assumption that people wish to participate, but rather we ask, what would it look like and feel like if people wish to participate? And that is how we approached our consultation with the Indigenous community. And in conversations with the superintendent, Deb Whitten, and the director of the Indigenous Ed department, the 4 houses shared that they wish to remain informed with the project and will continue to provide input as the project advances. Next slide, please. And here is just a quick snapshot of the engagement activity timeline, capturing where we started and where we are today. So as we discussed, we started in November of last year, and here we are summarizing all the actions and everything that has taken place over the past school year and looking to get approval of the detailed design. Next slide. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Marianne Trofimuk. I'm the principal here at Cedar Hill Middle School. Beth and I would like to say thank you to the Board of Education, both past and present, for this amazing opportunity. It really has been such a learning experience for both of us through taking part of the pre-design and the design phases of this new build, and working alongside the steering committee with all of the expertise that we've been part of and all of the care for this exciting new building project.
Good evening. My name is Beth Richardson. I'm the vice principal here. Last year, Marianne and I were involved in almost 70 different events, activities, tasks, and meetings around this process, all of which were part of a high-level process of building a school. It started last September with a team of 4 architects walking through the existing school here with us, and here we are 14 months later with a finished design. Marianne and I took the lead with staff by first taking them through understanding the transition process, then the visioning phase, and then the really exciting part, the tours. The school team that toured other schools was made up of 6 teachers and an educational assistant. Between the internal team and Marianne and I, we visited 14 BC schools. Following visits, we shared findings, made recommendations about certain elements of new schools, as well as taking the staff through a series of visioning exercises. At the same time, we gained input from students, both the present Cedar Hill Middle School students and our 4 feeder school students. You can see a photo of some of our Cedar Hill students up there. As well, KMBR did small group engagement sessions with teaching, admin, and maintenance staff on a department by department basis to review the programming relationship requirements and the initial floor plan layouts. Much input was gathered during all of these collaborative sessions. We were taken by the student input. Students know what they want in a school, and we're delighted to see that so much of what they wanted has been included in the design. Next slide, please.
The initial plan in 2018 was to build the school on the north field in green there. After community consultation, the site for the new school shifted south to what is shown on this current map in red. This was to ensure the full field in the north was available for student use during construction. At this stage, the parking was located on the south, and the hope was to have the parking lot accessible off Cedar Hill. Next slide, please. In February of 2022, the following conceptual drawing was submitted to the ministry for review. At this point, the conceptual design is essentially a block exercise showing the desired areas. The submission to the ministry did not require any type of costing. The ministry feedback indicated possible cost pressures associated with the complicated building shape. As part of the conceptual design submission to the ministry, the school district submitted a business case outlining the proposed NLC programming and rationale. The comments back identified that the NLC space needed to be reduced as the space as designed would present cost pressures. The architects then took the feedback and presented schematic design number 1. Next slide, please.
During schematic design, the building was streamlined to allow for less angles, and the NL space was reduced as per ministry suggestions. As part of the schematic design submission to the ministry, the schematic design must be costed by a professional quantity surveyor to ensure it is within the ministry budget. The schematic design as submitted was 11 million over budget, and the ministry asked for a formal value engineering session to take place to bring the design back within budget. The ministry was part of these value engineering discussions and helped identify the following considerations. The project was over the approved ministry area standards and had to be reduced in size. The 2-story open spaces were increasing the size and complexity of the design. There were still many angles to the school that were proving costly. The roof line needed to be simplified. Collaboration areas should be reconsidered as they were not funded by the area standards, and the NLC space couldn't be afforded as designed. Next slide, please. So this led to schematic design number 2 submission. To get back within budget, the NLC space was further reduced and the building shape and roof line were further streamlined. This new design increased the building's energy efficiency, which was great, and maintained all the functionality identified during the engagement process, where we were even able to keep the high priority collaboration areas. Although no additional space could be added to the school for a larger NLC, the architects were able to incorporate many of these items into the approved area. For example, the Indigenous welcoming room, a gym mezzanine, and a servery. The same number of classrooms were achieved as in schematic design number 1. Next slide, please.
Oh, this is a different design. Sorry. The current design as it sits, it's got an Indigenous welcome space. We've incorporated the exterior basketball court. It's moved to a rectangular design, which is more cost efficient and energy efficient, and all the classrooms are within, or all the spaces are within ministry standards. The gym will be tendered, the gym mezzanine in itself will be tendered separately and will be included if budget allows. The structure for the gym mezzanine will be a part of the construction budget. The multi-purpose space is a standard area, and the servery was accommodated in the foods room with a roll-up door, fridge, and cupboard space. And it's close proximity to the multi-purpose area and the Indigenous welcome space, which we heard was necessary. Next slide, please. Oh, I should also state that all the classrooms are pretty much the same size. It's 75 square meters, which is actually larger than most of the classrooms in your current school. So the approved design elements that have been incorporated that came out of the engagement process are, there's 4 small neighborhoods with classrooms, collaboration area, inclusive rooms and breakout rooms. There's 21 classrooms, all that include sinks, windows, technology packages, whiteboards, and shelving. There's 6 exploratory spaces on the first floor. There's 4 inclusive education rooms, 7 breakout rooms, braille room, counseling offices, sensory room, collaboration teaching area outside classrooms, gym with a gender neutral change room, art with kiln room and storage, library with a green room and room for chrome cart storage, multi-purpose area, and Indigenous welcome space with exterior access and proximity to the foods room and an exterior basketball court. Next slide, please. Okay. The school district engaged a traffic consultant who studied the site during peak times and worked with the school district and Saanich to address traffic concerns in this area. Within these engagements, Saanich did not approve the parking lot access off Cedar Hill Road. The new design includes 2 entrances off Gregory with spaces for parents to pick up and drop off within the lot and 48 staff parking spaces. The new design allows for safer truck access for the waste management truck and better flow with a recirculation loop and further parking spaces on Gregory Place. Next slide, please. Saanich has identified Cedar Hill Road as an all ages and abilities spine network as part of their active transportation plan. As such, a 4-meter multi-use pathway is required as part of this project. The 4-meter pathway will have a raised curb and buffer that separates students and vehicles and will run the length of Cedar Hill, with the project and Saanich sharing these costs for the 4-meter multi-use path. The corner of Gregory and Cedar Hill will be improved to provide better delineation between cars and students using a raised curb and buffer. As part of the active transportation plan, the project will provide bike lockers or a bike shelter to encourage active transport. Saanich, when planning future road improvements, will explore the requirement for a left turn lane off Cedar Hill and onto Gregory Place. Next slide, please. So this slide just shows the overall site plan as approved by the ministry. As you can see, there's lots of consideration that has gone into the design, from the topography to the existing services, and takes into account the engagement and the needs of the students and the community. Next slide, please.
Hi, everyone. It's Marianne again. So here in this slide, we're going to talk about this slide for a little bit. We've got the first floor and the second floor. So how did we get here? Well, I'm going to tell you a bit about it. During the visioning process, a number of themes began to emerge. We've already talked about that a bit. And these themes were the high-level design goals, and they served as what you've already heard, a term called design drivers. And those design drivers help to steer the design through the various phases of this process. So as we went through the visioning process, all of the conversations centered around what we hope to have now, but we also kept in mind that this school will be serving students for the next 75 years and beyond. So this truly is a next generation school. The new design that you see here is based on the design drivers. So we're going to spend a bit of a time just unpacking a few of those for you that came out of all those processes. So 3 of the drivers were collaboration, visibility, and community. So through this, students expressed interest in having informal collaborative learning spaces that are open. And so these design drivers can be seen in the spacious and open main entry. And if you look to floor number 1, you'll see that taupe color. I think it's called taupe. And that's the multi-purpose student commons. And in that area, the school is also double height. So that allows for that design driver of openness to be at the forefront. And then adding in another design, 2 design drivers, connectedness and integration. The staff and the students expressed a desire to have a sense of community and togetherness. And that was in everything that we heard. So to this end, for staff, there's a central staff room. So it's the first floor, the purple area. There's multiple little spaces in there, as you can see underneath the red arrow. So that whole area is the staff room in the office. And that's a place for staff to gather. And it is close to the office so that there is that connection and that community sense. And then you'll see all of the blue, so multiple blue throughout, both first floor and second floor. All those are classrooms, and they're clustered together. And all of the classrooms have windows, and those windows are purposeful to see outside into the hallways and into the shared learning spaces that are outside of the classroom areas. So you're from a classroom, you'll see the shared learning space, and you'll also see neighboring classes. And that allows for a feeling of a cohesiveness and flow and that community sense and integration. The new design is showing here, as you can see, there are 5 collaborative learning spaces within those groups. And this is where the really big collaboration can happen. It's going to happen in the classrooms, but then the classes can come together outside in that collaborative learning space. And that's all the gray areas that are in and amongst or in the middle of the classroom sections. And then as well, within those collaborative sections, you can see small breakout rooms. And that's a really unique feature of this school. And so those breakout rooms will allow for small groups and or individuals to break away, and those will be for project work, conferencing, and even individual. And again, we heard from the students that they want to have lots of opportunity for community, but they also want opportunity for quiet time too. So that does exactly that. And then lastly, with the driver of community in mind, the office is open. It has lots of windows from the inside and the outside, so the inside of the school. And we learned those are called sight lines, which are a really important feature of, the center of the hub of the school, like the office. And then with everything, it's open and high visibility. It really feels welcoming. And then there's a meeting room. It's again in purple. So down across from that office area, across the hallway, it's a specialized meeting room. And that is also another special place. It will be a place where we host, where the school hosts meetings, and it gives the school a place to really honor guests and community when they come in. Beth's going to tell you a little bit more about some of these unique features.
Thanks, Marianne. The next design driver that we looked at was the idea of exploration, particularly in a middle school. This is really important. There was a strong desire from participants to maintain and enhance the exploratory programs. So on the first floor, starting at the top left side in the pink, and then moving down pink and dark purple and turquoise colors. These are the 4 exploratory spaces. And then also included in that area is the music space. As requested, the music room is close to the gym, which is sensible for performance needs. And many of these rooms have direct access to outside as well. The next important design driver was inclusivity. So for students and staff to ensure inclusivity exists as an essential driver, it can be seen in a number of ways, from the all gender washrooms and change rooms throughout the school. And there's also accessibility by way of having an elevator centrally located. And you'll see on the first floor in that yellow area, that includes a braille room, a sensory room, and counseling areas. Another driver is the move from the shift from a traditional library to the more contemporary learning commons model. So if you're looking on the first floor, that's the mint green on the left side, which includes also the Indigenous Welcome Center. This has been achieved by the placement and design of the LLC as being a central space at the heart of the school with access to outdoors, plenty of light, ample opportunity for a variety of flexible spaces. And as you can see, has the important Indigenous Welcome Center and a breakout green room for multimedia opportunities. People in each of the participant groups also talked at length about the need for nature and outdoor connections with outdoor learning in covered spaces. So as another design driver, this can be seen in the outdoor access of the numerous ground floor rooms, as well as the back spaces, which would be the left-hand side of the buildings of the first and second floor, look out onto the natural wooded area and the Gary Oak Meadow. The outdoor spaces have been made intentionally. These areas are protected and will be contained. And there also included a covered canopy structure. In a moment, in a slide just in a moment, you'll see the colors inside the school, which evoke a feeling of bringing the outside inside and bringing inside the natural environment, and soft and warm and calm and peaceful. And while we know this is a blueprint, we hope that we have helped a little bit to bring it to life for you. Next slide, please.
So lastly, with the driver of community, Cedar Hill Middle School 2025 will bring a great new facility that will benefit families in this community for decades to come. The design of the outside is, as you can see here, it's clean, it's modern, and it includes natural elements. It's extremely welcoming. And the next slide. And then here are a few images of the future 2025 school. We're very excited about the future school and with all of its wonderful the elements, and we're looking forward to the new design. It will honor the requests that have come up numerous times to ensure that we keep and display some of the heritage of this current school. So that's going to be done. We're going to be bringing over some of the beautiful stained glass that is all over this present school. And then we will be taking the very important and well-used large bench from this office, as well as the mural. And you can see it there in the bottom picture that's been infused there in the design. That's the new mural that was just erected in 2020. And that's it for us. Thank you.
Okay, the new Cedar Hill Middle School as designed will be the greenest school in School District 61. It will be a net zero energy ready school and will incorporate ground and air source heat pumps, a geothermal field, and 100 kilowatt of solar panels. Compared to a typical middle school design, this new school reduces the greenhouse gas emissions by 90% and advances the board's climate energy motion. Next slide, please. Okay, the new school is built to today's building code standards. The new design improves mobility with eliminating ramps and with a central elevator to decrease travel between classes. There is a braille and a sensory room within the design. There will be transition strips and tactile warning strips on stairs and railings. All the tech packages will have the capacity for voice amplification, and the signage throughout the school will incorporate braille as shown in the photo. The design will undergo a Rick Hansen Foundation review, and the project will be highly accessible and inclusive, going above and beyond the current code and accessibility requirements. Next slide, please.
But during the course of the project, a heritage planner was hired to provide an analysis of the heritage aspects of the school. The report included engagement with Mount Clark alumni and the Senate Heritage Foundation. Throughout this process, a number of items within the school and site were identified for retention. These included, as Marianne and Beth were saying, the long bench from the current office will be reused in the new office. Stained glass windows created by a former teacher and her students will be relocated within the new design. The 1950s time capsule that is believed to be buried near the flagpole will be unearthed and buried in a new location on the new site. There's also an opportunity for students to engage in burying a new capsule at this time. Selected art, like the mural and some of our Indigenous art within the school, will be incorporated into the new design.
Maura, sorry, you're very muffled again. So when you next speak, maybe if the laptop can be pointed more in, it might be just a direction of the microphone.
Yeah, I think that's my last slide. I'm sorry. Did you want me to go through it again?
No, it was legible, just a little muffled.
Okay, sorry. Next slide, please.
And it's Harold. To sum up what we've heard here tonight, there are a couple of sections on this particular slide. One is for the improvement of the design, and second are some important considerations if the project is not approved. I'll leave those for you to go through at your leisure. And I just wanted to emphasize that the new design of the school will provide a safe school in the event of an earthquake. It will accommodate an addition for enrollment pressures if these materialize. It will provide upgrades to traffic issues in this area, particularly if there is a new addition and the addition of the turn light at Gregory and Cedar Hill. It will support a 21st century learning environment. The space has been carefully looked at. They've been carefully reviewed to ensure that they meet the pedagogy that we speak about, and particularly with the collaboration spaces that are in front of all classrooms within the building. It will reduce the carbon emissions and be the greenest school in the district. Cedar Hill has been prioritized for a seismic replacement capital project out of more than 250 seismic projects provincially. We are very fortunate to be at this stage in the development of the new school. The new school design is educationally relevant, inspiring, and reflective of student voice, safe, sustainable, and cost efficient. Delaying this project keeps students in H1 seismically vulnerable schools for up to 11 more years. If I could get you to hit the next slide, please. After looking at what we have reviewed here, we now have a motion to present to the board that the Board of Education of School District 61 approve the design development of Cedar Hill Middle School seismic replacement major capital project for advancement to construction phase as presented. And I leave that with you, Chair Painter. Next slide, please. And back to you, Chair Painter.
Thank you. And well, to begin with, can I ask if there is anyone willing to put the motion on the floor so that we can begin discussion? Trustee Duncan, is that your will, or are you raising a question?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to put it on the floor so we can begin discussion. I'm keen to get into the discussion part of this evening. So if we need to move the motion to do that, then I'm happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. And I will be setting up a speakers list, and of course, this is a committee meeting. Members of the public and our stakeholders are all invited to present. So I will start off with Trustee Duncan, and then on to Trustee Kwan and Cindy Rock.
Great, thanks, Chair. I'll just dive right in. Thank you so much to everybody for your team effort in presenting the slide deck to us tonight. Appreciate it. I think there's a lot of exciting aspects of this project, everything from increased accessibility, the energy efficient elements, being able to incorporate heritage elements, and your Indigenous welcome space, in addition to, clarifying that the classrooms, rather than being, I think it was said that the current classrooms are somewhere between 54 and 106 square meters, that the new spaces will all be 75 square meters. So sort of somewhere in between, or somewhere in the middle of what we currently have at the existing Cedar Hill. I also note that we're going to, in terms of the existing building, which I know was built as a junior high school, it looks like we're looking at about 1,300 square meters of less space, but that space has been designed with collaboration in mind. And I know to ministry standards, which are obviously different for a middle school than for a junior high school. So, while there's all those exciting elements, and I just wanted to acknowledge those, I do want to spend some time just delving in to the shop space. We've heard quite clear that there's some concerns about the type of technology or trades related space that will be available in the new school. I wonder if I could ask through the chair to the appropriate staff member to maybe just circle back, if you would, to the design. I think it was the floor 1 and 2 slide, and just walk us through what will be available. And then maybe from there, if with the committee's indulgence, I have a few questions about the shop space and what we might be able to do there. And would it help if I pointed us to the page? Let me just get back to the slide deck in the packet. So I believe it was on page 44 of the packet. I believe that's the updated schematic design 2. Is that right? To the chair. I don't know if it's to Marnie or to whoever can answer.
I'm happy to answer. Sorry, I'm not sure if I should just speak up, but okay. So the new shop as located is on the first floor, and it's close to Cedar Hill Road. Well, it is on the part that's located on Cedar Hill Road. The proposed new shop is an exploratory space to accommodate robotics, 3D printing, and hand tools for both metal and wood. The design is intended to be flexible and forward-looking to allow students to create things with their hands. Some equipment that may be brought over to the new shop could include soldering. There will be 2 booths to accommodate soldering and wood burning. The metal bandsaw could come over, the chop saw, sandblaster, drill presses, shear, punch. Wood that does not need to be accommodated for the dust collector, like the chisels and the planes and the drills, and metal hand tools can be accommodated in this as well. Does that answer your question?
It does. No, thank you. So just if I may, through the chair. So yeah, it certainly clarifies one of the questions I had, which is to what extent can we reuse some of the existing equipment that we've invested resources in upgrading recently. And I'm wondering to what extent then, given that some of the equipment we would not be able to reuse because the plan currently is not to include the ventilation system that would be required. To what extent could that be something that could be incorporated in future? So is the design such that it would allow us at a future date to incorporate the ventilation and then to reuse the equipment that we have invested in that requires that ventilation?
Yeah, that's correct. You can add the dust collector at a later date. The biggest question with the community and the staff will be the location of the dust collector. You can put it in the back near the fields, or you can put it in the front at Cedar Hill. So we've spoken to the mechanical engineer about that already, and you can add a dust collector at a later date. It just means that your net ready school would need more solar panels to make it net zero.
Okay. And then if I may, just one more question around the shop space, Chair. So when I appreciate that sometime late spring, the quantity surveyor's estimate prompted this sort of redesign or a discussion about how we could, I think the ministry's term is value engineer things. So we basically reduce the cost. I wonder to what extent the difference in cost between what was initially planned for a shop, so including the dust or the ventilation, and what is currently planned. Do we know what the difference in cost is so that the board has an idea of what future investment might be required in order to upgrade the shop?
Yeah, in today's dollars, it's about $1 million. And that would include the dust collector, all the ducting for the dust collector, some soundproofing for the outside. We made the assumption that the dust collector would be located on Cedar Hill Road. So you'd need some soundproofing for that and the pad for the dust collector as well. So that's all included in the $1 million.
I'm sorry, Chair, if I may. Sorry, this has prompted me to come up with another question. If you would indulge me one more question.
Last one.
Okay, thank you. And so, okay, so $1 million. So, I'm just curious because when, as our presenters have pointed out, you would think given the need for trades and the need for skilled trades that the ministry would want to support a full shop to the extent that it is the first opportunity for students to explore going into a trade. And we do want to encourage that because we do have a shortage. I'm wondering why that was identified as a possible reduction in light of the need to basically to school more folks in skilled trades.
I could start that conversation. Deborah Harold might want to elaborate to mine. So there was a SWOT analysis that was actually done to explore the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats to include a full wood shop, into the design of the new Cedar Hill Middle School. The school is, like I said, it is a exploratory shop, so the kids can touch on different types of trades. There's over 100 different types of apprenticeships out there. So this is just a touch into the trades. So this will allow them to get a little bit of woodwork, a little bit of metalwork. They could add robotics, electronics. The sky's the limit, really. It depends on what, and I definitely don't teach. So it really depends on what is programmed in there. And that's better, I think, for Deborah Harold than myself to delve into.
Okay, just as we move forward, mindful of the time and recognizing that we have a number of people with questions, please keep your prefacing to a minimum. We'll focus on the questions, and if there needs to be some clarification afterwards, then by all means, but try to stay on point as much as possible. Trustee Kwan?
Sorry, Chair, just before we move on, could we hear
yeah.
from Superintendent Whitten? Because I think.
Oh, I apologize. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
My apologies, Superintendent.
No problem. Thank you. So yes, the grade 6 to 8 ADST curriculum does look at design thinking and foundational skills, as Marnie has articulated, and the opportunity to explore is really that. So with this build and with this ADST room, and I think makerspace is an unfortunate term because that was used many, many years ago, and I don't believe this to be the future. I think it is the movement forward and having a flexible learning space that looks at opportunities around, as Marnie has said, some metal, some wood, some robotics, some computational thinking, and some areas that are included in the redesign curriculum. So I do think that this does align with the future and aligns with future opportunities as students move through grade 6, 7, and 8, and then prepare them into what exists in secondary schools with all of the other shops classes.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Whitten. And now I will cede the floor to Trustee Kwan.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so I actually have a lot of questions, but what I'm going to try to do is prioritize and perhaps save some for later if there's time, to give community members and other colleagues a chance as well. I guess what I really want to focus on for myself is just clarifying safety around the parking space and the corner of Gregory and Cedar Hill Road. I know right now that's actually not something where parents are even allowed to go down to drop off or pick up. And so I just wanted a little clarification on some of the upgrades that'll be happening to make that a safer space for student pedestrians as well as cyclists. So I just, the first thing was that the buffer between pedestrians and cars, and just a little more about how that looks. How does that actually create a buffer, for vehicles that are turning left down into Gregory Place? How are we going to stop cars from, right now the biggest safety issue is cars turning and not seeing pedestrians or cyclists. So how does a buffer actually, sustain that or make them more visible? Do we have any plans in place for visibility, perhaps a crosswalk with lights like we have across Cedar Hill right now? And I know Deputy Superintendent Caldwell mentioned perhaps traffic lights, but I heard an if in there. So I just wondered, what's the status on that? And is there anything further we can do with District of Saanich to further that and to see how that goes? Lots of questions to unpack, and I'm not sure who to direct them at. So hopefully staff can speak up as to who's best to answer them.
Okay, well, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, by all means, Superintendent, with your indulgence, we'll put everything through Marnie, and if you feel someone else needs there, I'll keep my eyes up for it.
Okay, so I'll try and answer all of them. So a traffic consultant was hired, and what they did is they looked at the peak times during the different times during the day and at different days. And they actually did counts from Gregory and counts from Garnet and counts on Cedar Hill Road. And then they actually took all the counts from Garnet and moved them onto Gregory. And they added an extra 60 trips, if you will, for all the extra students that are going to be added on. So that was kind of their base premise where they started from. And then they looked at that and they designed the parking lot and they designed the multi-pathway. So it will be 4 meters and there's about 1.7 meters. Don't quote me on the exact amount. And it's a raised curb and like a boulevard in between, a grassy area. So that's going to be the buffer between the cars and the students that are traveling on that 4-meter path. And that, if you can imagine, that kind of rolls around to the corner on Gregory, and there's a 2-meter sidewalk with a buffer on that corner. And then there's extra parking spaces on Gregory, and the sidewalk goes the full way down into lot 17, which is the far west of the new parking lot. So as far as traffic lights, that was not part of the project. It's a big cost to the project, so Saanich kindly deferred that. And so when Saanich is looking at their active transportation, they're looking at improvements that they can actually do in their project budget, not ours, or in a new development to get perhaps traffic lights, maybe a left turn lane onto Gregory. So they're looking at all that in their active transportation plans. They're well aware of this project and they're trying to get those extra needs into their costs, not ours.
And sorry, just to follow up there through the chair, if I may, with regards to perhaps, across where that intersection is going to be, where cars are turning, say, left or right into Gregory Place, is there a possibility for a lighted crosswalk space there, just to make kids more visible, whether it's District of Saanich or our project?
So we can definitely look into that. We can ask our team that question and get it costed out, and we can also speak to Saanich about that, but I don't have the answer for you today.
Yeah, no worries. I appreciate that. Also just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone here who's presented. I know how much work has gone into this, and also those that aren't here. I'm sure there's lots of people here that have put a lot of work into this as well. I also just wanted a quick question, if I may, Chair, one more.
Very quickly.
Okay. I know option 3 was partial upgrade and partial new. And I just wondered if any costing has been looked at, would it still cost as much as the upgrade? Is it possible to see a copy of the costing? Like, would it still be 47 million like what we're planning now? And then also what 3 blocks we're thinking about being kept, and what were the seismic ratings of those 3 blocks?
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah, I think that we would need to go away and look at the PDR. Neither of us were involved in the writing of the PDR. It was quite a while ago. So we need to go away and look at those questions. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker or person with questions is Cindy, followed by Tracy, and then Trustee Gagnon.
Thank you. I acknowledge that the ministry has put certain limitations on this project that I think there's some frustrations around, but I understand that. Now, with the concerns from the community and staff, those colored sticky notes and all those boards were mostly concerns. So on top of the woodwork and metal work concerns, I think some of the main ones were the lack of PE space, the parking and parent drop-off is together, and I think a lot of people wanted them to be separate. Gym seating in the gym with pull-out bleachers, there's a big community connection with the gym. There's no alternate PE spaces, especially if you are projecting a school community of 600 students at that time when the new build will be finished. There's no alternate PE spaces, which I said. Multi-purpose room, there's no multi-purpose room, and I think that would be great, and a fitness room or stage. And I'm wondering why we lost that community partnership that would have brought in some extra money with the NLC. So really my other question is, what communication will you give to the public to address these concerns because they feel like they haven't been listened to?
So I think me and Maura can address some of them. So as far as the gym, you mentioned gym seating. From the very beginning consultation, the gym seating was eliminated at the very onset, and that was in consultation with the staff. With consultation with the staff, we did add a dividing curtain in the gym to allow for PE classes, and we added the exterior basketball courts and the wall ball, can't say that, the wall ball. I think it's the ball wall. The ball wall, some wall in the outside that the kids can throw balls at. How's that? The mezzanine was actually added into the project, and we're hoping that this will come when it's tendered. It will come in under budget, and the structural portion of the mezzanine will be in the budget. It's whether or not we can get the walls and the electrical and the drywall up, and that can act as another PE space, a fitness room or something else. The ministry does not fund the stage in their part of their area standards. So that was reduced at the onset. And I think Maura is better to take the NLC funding question.
Sorry, we're going to have the same problems with speaking. Could you tilt the laptop towards you?
Sorry, yes, we do have a multi-purpose room
It is the beige room that Marianne and Beth were pointing out. Is kind of the heart of the school, just across from the office, big open multi-purpose area. So we haven't lost the multi-purpose room. As far as the NLC funding is different than it was 4 years ago. So NLC funding used to be for 15% of the space, so it added meters squared to a school. The ministry has changed that, and now they provide an amount below the line, so we don't get the funding for it, and it is based on your capacity of the school. So when we did our business case, we said we were going to do childcare. And at conceptual design, we came back and we said, well, we've listened to our community. It's not what they'd like. Here's a list of the things we'd like to explore. And we put them all in the school. And when we went to them, they said, well, you can't afford that with the money that you have. So we reduced it. And we came back and had it costed, and it was still over the amount that we needed to have it within. And what the ministry said basically is that we need to design an NLC space that fits within our budget. And so that's what we did. We designed an NLC that fit in our budget, because when we come to them at pretender design, we're going to have to apply for that funding to have it moved above the line. And we have to be coming in on budget for it. So it's just the difference. And if you look at Victoria High School, it was funded under the old type of funding where we got 15% of the space.
Okay, thank you.
On to Tracy now.
Thank you. And yeah, I really appreciated that presentation because it gave me a lot of the background that I've been missing, having not been in every meeting for the last several years. So, and many of the concerns that have been raised by families were already raised by speakers before me, so I don't need to say them, but I will reiterate that I am hearing those same concerns from the community, from families. But I guess I'm really disappointed to hear the ministry's, requirement that you can't build beyond current capacity. And what I didn't get, and maybe I just missed it and you said it, was what current capacity is. And then the question for me was, I saw that you can apply once you exceed that capacity. And because I don't know what it currently is, I don't know when that's going to happen. So that was the question that I had.
Our current capacity right now, as it sits, is a little over 500. So at the time of the PDR stage, when it was approved in around 2018, it was approved for a 575 seat school. Throughout this couple of years, that 575 capacity with the known developments in the district, we do it every single year, it did not exceed 575. This year it actually exceeded. So this is the year that we can actually apply for an addition, and that needs to go on this year's 5-year capital plan for the expansion, and they're completely different funding envelopes. Yeah. That's the big one. They're just completely different funding envelopes. So we can add a 4 classroom addition with the business case onto this year's ministry plan for hopeful approval.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Gagnon.
Thank you, Chair. And this ties in with what Tracy actually just presented, where I'm struggling with how we're going to justify spending $47 million of taxpayer money on a school that's going to be too small when we open it. You mentioned earlier, I believe, that there was, if there was to be an expansion, it would be in the northwest of the building. And I was wondering if you could show, I believe it would be on page 49 of the pack up, where exactly that would go.
It's on the west of the back of the gym. Yeah, to the back of the gym.
On the west side of the gym? Just not the north, but the northwest?
So let me just get the map in front of me. Yeah. Yeah, it's on the west side, so the northwest side of the gym.
Which
So
means we need
essentially
to
where the
build a new
basketball court currently is.
Yeah, we'd have to move the basketball.
That would be part of our ask. But just to reiterate that this is the approval that we have right now is based on the seismic requirement. So it was a replacement due to seismic need, not growing capacity. So, yeah.
And we should also mention that the expansion, if it's approved, was placed there so we didn't encroach on lot lines. That was a big one. If we start encroaching on the lot line, it means we then have to do offsite improvements on Garnet Road as well as Cedar Hill Road, which just adds to extra costs. So we kept it within, if you could picture, 2 lot lines. So the only offsite improvements we had to do as part of the permit would be on half of Cedar Hill and Gregory.
Thank you. I believe that's all I have for you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, coming back to Trustee Kwan.
Thanks, Chair. Okay, so now I have a bit of time. I'm gonna ask a couple more questions. Coming back to the dust collector and that system, I think really, in my opinion, I think we're really, really close in design. But I think that dust collector is just, it's a huge thing. It's, we've heard from community members alike, as well as teachers and parents and students that, it's almost a deal breaker for them that, they want to see that. And so questions around what could we do? Could we rejig some things? Like, for example, have we exhausted any grants that might cover solar panels in some other way, so we could use those funds towards something to make this complete? Like, just thinking outside of the box here, has any of that stuff been explored?
So we have not explored the extra grants, but I will say that I think it's in July in 2021, we signed the CPFA, and that has our schedule and our scope and our budget within there. We're at the design set size. And if we go and say, if there's a motion, say, to put on the table to say we want the Dust Collector Act added back in, that will create a project design again. So we're going to have to go back to the ministry because we've changed the scope and the budget. We've had preliminary discussions with the ministry already, and this will, in essence, defer our project. So they'll give our money to other provincial seismic projects, and we will have to put this project back on our 5-year capital plan and start from square one.
Sorry, I'm just going to jump in here for a sec because I thought I heard something different before, and maybe it's just the way I'm processing. It was indicated that there's a capacity to add it after the fact at some point in time down. So would the plan having the capacity to add it in the future, would that require a change, or is it simply to increase the scope to include the?
No, we wouldn't, it's completely separate. So what we'd have to do is we'd have to build the school as designed. One project, completely finish it, spend all the money. And then in a completely separate project, we'd have to add in the dust collector. So after 2025, we'd have to add in the dust collector. Adding in the dust collector right now as it stands would be a brand new design. And the ministry will defer our project and give the money to other provincial seismic projects.
Okay, and just for my own satisfaction, how old is the dust collector and shop equipment in the current Cedar Hill Middle School? We went through an upgrade on most of this equipment not so long ago.
Yeah, so in all the middle schools and all the secondary schools, we added in a new table saw. So that's new within the last 3 years. I think Cedar Hill Middle School got a couple of new scroll saws and maybe a new drill press. The rest of it would be older equipment that was previous before any of these upgrades. As far as the old dust collector, it'd be original to the school. So I'd have to go back and actually figure out when the system was put in. But since the last edition was in 1975, I think you could roughly say around that year, but I don't have the exact year on me. But we could not move it into the new school. It doesn't have the fire suppression and the blast gates that we require.
Okay.
So we can't reuse the dust collector.
Just for one other point of clarification, this is if the current design was as proposed was altered to include the exhaust system, or dust collection system, that would create an entirely new project. But if we moved forward with the expectation that either internally or we would seek provincial funding to install that pretty much at the same time that students started to move into the school, that's something within the realm of possibilities.
Yeah, we definitely have to sign off the project and get the occupancy. And then if that's something that the district wanted to do, is add the dust collector after we gained occupancy and the kids are in, yes, that project could happen over a summer, just have to tender.
And that, does that matter if we're seeking provincial funding or if we're using district funding, or?
No, we just put it on our 5-year capital plan, probably under the SEP heading, I just totally forgot what SEP stands for. So under that funding heading, we put it in as a project budget to see what year we could get it funded in.
Right, but if the district chose to use its capital funds for this purpose in 2025, and we're not seeking provincial funding,
yeah, what we could do is
alter the plan.
No, it wouldn't. What we'd have to do is we'd have to look at if the kids are going to move in September 25, we could back it up at about 4 to 6 months and tender the project with the expectation that it gets done as soon as the occupancy is signed off and we get full occupancy from Saanich. Then you could do it soon after that, but you have to finish that first project before you can start a second project.
Thank you. Okay, I'll go to Trustee Duncan and Trustee Kwan, your hand's up, but I'm not sure if that's a new hand or a, okay, well, I'll come back to you after Trustee Duncan then.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, just I'm glad to get some clarity about what the possibilities are, and I think this is good. I mean, this is what we want to be doing in our standing committees, is trying to problem solve and think how we might move this important project forward, but also kind of mitigate some of the downsides that folks have told us they want to see us do differently. So I want to go back just to the question of the NLC funding. I think it's interesting to note that this is, I thought, a separate funding envelope provided by the ministry for projects. Sounds like it's changed, certainly since previous projects. I'm wondering, at what point are we going to know how much additional funding we will get for the NLC? It sounds to me like you're saying essentially it's not determined whether the province will provide NLC funding until after the project's completed or at some point during the project cycle.
So we're hoping to get that decision in the spring 2023 when we go to tender. That's when we can apply for all of the supplemental items, and the NLC is now considered a supplemental item, so it's not a guarantee, and we'll apply for the economic adjustment at that time as well.
But is that built in? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Marnie.
No, the ministry is very well of like all the steps, and we've had conversations like bi-weekly with them, so they're very well aware, and they're approving of our design. So it would be very surprising if they didn't approve any of this funding.
No, thanks. I wanted to clarify. So is the NLC, the proposed funding that we'll apply for at the right time, is it already built into the project budget to that 46 million? It is. Okay, so it's not additional. Okay. All right, that's helpful. I was just thinking, do we have extra money to play with maybe later? Okay. All right. Yeah, no, it's just so unfortunate that there is nothing built into these projects for additional enrollment, because obviously this was the most cost-effective option, or the ministry wouldn't have funded it. So it is unfortunate that we're not seeing some increased enrollment capacity built in. I wonder whether at some point when you're in discussions with the ministry, there is some focus on those extra costs that will arise that they'll end up having to cover for doing the addition later, rather than we've already got a crew on site.
Yeah, we've been talking with them a lot, and they seem, open to us requesting an addition. They can't make a promise whether we will get it or not, but we have been telling them about, extra costs that we might need to include in that addition to mitigate, some of the traffic needs and stuff like that.
And if I can just point out, this is nothing new. This is an ongoing challenge the ministry has of dealing with virtually infinite demands with a very finite budget. And, for those of you who can think back to Royal Bay Secondary, for example, they delivered portables at the same time that they were opening that school for the very same reason. It just, yeah, it's strictly a budgetary issue. So not much to work with there. So I was down to that. No, I'm going to go to Cindy and then back to Karen, back to Trustee Kwan. Sorry.
Thank you. I have a question. I have two questions. One, there's a science lab that was built in, and because we're going to be at overcapacity, I assume that we're going to be forced. I say we because I work at Cedar Hill, in case none of you knew. Will we be forced to use that as a classroom?
Yeah, the business classroom, the science classroom, and then there is a 75 square meter inclusion classroom that is part of the classroom count. Yes.
So I'll give you an example. For example, in grade 8, they usually do an eyeball dissection, which is pretty typical. So has there been any consideration as to alternate spaces or what teachers need to do these labs for science?
I'm gonna actually defer you to Marianne and Beth because they're the expertise on teaching, not me or Maura. So if Marianne or Beth could take that question, that would be appreciated.
You're unmuted. Oh.
Well, what do you want to know, Cindy? Help us understand.
Well, I'm just trying to advocate for our staff as to the needs of the students and the programs that we're running at Cedar Hill. For our science teachers, that science lab is used, and we feel like we need a science lab to teach science. So are there alternate plans for them to have their labs?
What I can answer is that the science could be done within the classrooms or within those collaborative community spaces. So a group of 4 or 6 classrooms share that collaborative learning space. And so that could be acting as a science lab option. And there are sinks in every single classroom. As I understand, I think Marnie thumbs up, every single classroom has a sink. So that and a countertop area that would serve to assist with that, having that. And just a reminder, the school that we're presently in does have a beautiful science lab, but it was built with ministry standards of 91 years ago, and also not built as a middle school, but built as a junior secondary.
And we should also point out that part of the project, we have funding for furniture, and that furniture that needs to have a fulsome discussion. So something like science type tables with stainless steel could be part of that collaboration space as well to make up that teaching space. But we haven't delved into the furniture realm quite yet. That's further on in the budget.
Thanks. I have one last question. Unlike Royal Bay and mostly the new middle school in Langford, one thing that I think is a big concern about the Cedar Hill build is inflation and the cost of this new build compared to what it could have cost 5 years ago, and how that plays into ministry funding. Have they changed the funding because of inflation? And if not, what type of advocacy can we do as a school district, as a staff, as community members to help advocate to change with that, the inflation? You know what I'm trying to say. Thanks.
I think I can help with this question. So I meet with the ministry biweekly, and I have kept them apprised of how much, we're seeing the increase every time we get costing, how much the project has increased. And they're well aware that we're experiencing these issues. And it's possible, like if we keep on designing the way we're designing and moving the project forward, that they may have to go back to Treasury Board and ask for more funding, but we need to show that we're sticking with what we've already approved and moving forward in order to get that buy-in from them, right? But it's not a given, so they will request it and we'll see what happens. But they do understand that we're experiencing a lot of
And we're not the
inflation.
only project in the province that is experiencing the same problems. So they're well aware of it.
And Trustee Kwame.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience with me. I promise this will be a quick one. Just to follow up to the questions I was asking earlier about the whole shop and the dust collection. And I know that there are certain equipments that we've done, certain items of equipment that we've added in the recent years, which perhaps won't be able to be used without that dust collector. And I just wondered what would happen to that equipment in the interim. Would we be able to, put it in storage or have it somewhere? So, in preparation of having that dust collector in there so that it doesn't get lost to, the school.
Yeah, the facility department has a DC, so it's a big warehouse, if you will. It sounds big, but we've got a lot of stuff in it. It's full. But we can carve out space and put it on an upper shelf and make sure it's warm, dry, heated, doesn't rust and all that stuff, and just earmark it for Cedar Hill. That part's not a problem. You're welcome.
Trustee Gang, I see your hand up. Do you have one more question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a quick question about basically workplace health and safety. And without the dust collector in place, we are still within the standards of workplace health and safety?
Oh gosh, yeah. The mechanical engineers are the group that we have on. They've sized it as an actual applied science shop, not science. Sorry, applied technology shop. So they've got the correct ventilation in there, so there's no concern. And they do have the ventilation to allow for some soldering and some wood burning in there as well. So that's not a problem.
Thank you. When you had mentioned actually soldering earlier, that is what kind of triggered this alarm bell in my head, where I was like, I don't want students inhaling soldering fumes. That's gross. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Now, if I could just pause for a moment. Trustee Duncan, can you remind me, do we need a motion to continue now that we're at 10:04?
No, we do not. I believe it's 10:30.
Okay,
so we've got another 20 so minutes. But I mean, obviously, to get through our agenda, we'll need some more time. But maybe we could wait until we get closer to 10:30 and see where we get.
We will press on. Thank you very much, Trustee Duncan. So I'm going to ask a couple questions myself, and mine might go in a different direction. But the first one, a Braille classroom. Was this to anticipate a specific need for a student coming up through a feeder school, or is this just simply to have the capacity within the school? What was the motivation there?
I believe, Marianne, please correct me if I'm wrong. I believe there's a student coming up through a feeder school, that there's a current student in Cedar Hill Middle School that will require those special devices. So we did incorporate a Braille room, and if that's not needed in the future, that could be turned into an office or a sensory room or another room to use. But it's got special soundproofing in it because the Braille machine can get quite loud.
Understood. Thank you. Question about general HVAC. When we first started to discuss issues with COVID, one of the challenges that we encountered was the ability of the existing system to accept MERV 13 filters. Now, that was just the default that was being discussed at the time. I was wondering what considerations have been put into the HVAC system that we're going to be installing in this room to make it responsive to future challenges of that sort.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I have to get back to you on that one, but I will tell you that the engineer on this project is actually the lead on COVID protocols and procedures around HVAC. So he's the perfect person to have on this project. But I'll get back to you on that question because I'm not exactly sure what, I'm not sure.
Okay, no, and I could understand that was, and the other one, bit of a left fielder again. It's not lost on me the tragic incident that occurred just a couple blocks away from Cedar Hill on Shelburne. And the question I asked with Vic High, and it's 9 different doors or any, ground level doors, entry points, was the ability to actually remote lock doors for the school to be able to control access in some sort of an emergency situation. Is that something that is feasible, or am I just making things up from watching too many movies?
I honestly don't know. I think the question is it, unfortunately, the tragic event did happen. Is it common in where we live? No, thank goodness. We're lucky for that. Could we look into those costs and see if it's applicable? Yes. I just don't know enough. I've never actually been asked that question on any of our schools. So I'll find out.
Thanks. I found myself becoming risk averse since being a parent, and that's one of those things that you just can't quite shake. Thank you very much to everyone who's provided this one. We have a motion on the floor that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, approve the Cedar Hill Middle School design as presented. And approval would move this to the board. Show of hands, all those in favor? And we have all 4. Opposed? There's no one opposed, is there? I don't see anything. So with that in mind, the Cedar Hill Middle School design moves forward to the board. Thank you. On to facilities planning, operations, F1, October 22, 2022. Marnie, do I put that to you?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Me again. Okay, just a little bit of an update. I'll try and sum it up. So the maintenance department continues to complete monthly shop audits and has taken the work on in the metal shops and moving around the equipment and the safety lines. The team is currently at Lambert Park. They're working on the schedule for the remaining schools. So they hopefully all get complete before summer, and then the lines can be painted over the summer months. You'll also notice that there's some cracking on the columns at Oakland's noted around the windows. An engineer has been on site, and right now it's not believed to be structural issues, but they're investigating further. So we should know more soon about that. Minor Capital has started the fire alarm upgrades at Mackenzie and is currently painting the interior of Lake Hill. So that's going well. They're also busy with 5 childcare sites, 2 of which are planned to be open in September, with the remaining 3 to be open in 2024. And the team also continues to work on the classroom at Shoreline and the Vic West portable. We saw the first snowfall, I can't believe I'm saying that, which tested out our new snow plan. There's 24 sites that currently have no morning custodians, and maintenance is actually overseeing the shoveling and de-icing of these primary pathways before 7 a.m. These plans have been viewed by the principals and vice principals, and they've provided their feedback. And we've asked all the principals and vice principals to send their plans out to their communities, just to communicate with the communities. We also saw, last year, we saw a total of 101 internal field trips, and to date, we have 128 trips booked. The electric buses are running well. Everybody wants to drive one, and they run on an equivalent of $13 of gasoline, which is pretty awesome. We saw a large oak tree fall at Cloverdale during the school day. There is no injuries. An arborist has visited the site and determined the tree was weakened due to the ground being compacted due to foot traffic. The remaining trees, it's a little cluster, so the remaining trees in the grove at Cloverdale have undergone an assessment, with one adjacent tree in the grove actually being cut down to about 10 feet to accommodate a wildlife tree. And right now we're currently assessing all school district sites and determining the cost to install split rail around trees that are being most compacted by foot traffic. It's mainly in the elementary schools where the kids play around the trees. Due to the cold weather and the rain, we've seen a large number of problems with the quality of our phone service and security issues. This is mainly due to aging infrastructure. The LED upgrades continue at Squamish and Northridge, both which are nearing completion, and Uplands and Arbutus, they've actually installed, they've fitted them with programmable, they've fitted the exhaust fans with programmable timers which will see an annual combined utility savings of about 9,000 or a reduction of about 14 tons of greenhouse gas emissions. So that's pretty awesome. Questions?
Oh, question, Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marnie. Really appreciate you including the percentage complete for the metal shops. Thanks for remembering that and all the other things you have to remember. I just wanted to circle back about the aviation shops. I noticed it's not on the report this month. Is that just simply because everything's been done, all the upgrades are completed, or will it be on the report next month?
No, we're pretty much done there. They moved the equipment around. The aviation bunker where they hold the plane is done. It's safe. And then the little area inside, which is they share it with the aviation department. The equipment's all been moved down. And I just have to check if the safety lines are done. If they're not done, they'd be done over Christmas time. So it's just in our docket. I just don't remember if they're done or not. There's too many shops right now. So
yeah, I bet.
So close.
Yeah, okay, good to know. And then the only other thing was around electric school buses. So I hear tell that the feds have, I think it's $2.75 billion available for various projects around school buses and electrification of the bus fleet. I wonder if we have any need in our district for any further electric school buses.
It's a loaded question.
Sorry.
So Eric
does on the spot, Marnie.
No. For me, we've got two diesel or gasoline buses, so I would say get rid of them and get electric. I'll ask Eric that question just because he actually sits on a lot of those boards for those funding, so he's the perfect person to ask. As far as our needs with driving our kids to and from school, I don't think there's a need for extra buses for our bus routes. If we want to look at maybe bringing the inclusive needs busing in-house, there might be a need for electric buses. Let me ask Eric on that one.
Sounds good. Thank you. Appreciate it. And thanks again for your report.
You're welcome.
Okay, seeing no further questions, shall we move on to the Vic High School seismic project update?
Yeah, that's me again. I'm sorry. I'm just writing up.
Take your time, Marnie. It's been a busy night for you.
Okay, I gotta find my notes. No, I'll wing it. Oh, here we go. I found it. Sorry. Okay, Vic High. Okay, due to unforeseen market delays and labor shortages, which are creating further delays, due to these delays, it was decided that students and staff will remain at the Topaz campus and move into the new fully seismically upgraded building in January of 2024. So it's still forecasted that the project, most of the work will be done by the end of August, beginning of September, but we want to give a buffer to get that occupancy and finish the deficiency list. And this is mainly due to the staff. When they moved into SJ Willis, there was a lot of deficiencies not done, and it was very chaotic for our staff and students. So the students will now be moving into a new seismically upgraded building in January of 2024. We're on the final tending for the project, and it's progressing well. The inside of the school is progressing well. We've got the electrical mechanicals well underway, as it's the framing and the drywall installation. The flooring and millwork installations will start in the next 2 weeks. So the exterior windows and terracotta repairs are progressing. The drainage of the sports field is complete with volleyball drainage underway right now. The installation of the fence post is underway with the perimeter field curb installation starting soon. The new expansion, the NLC there, is progressing well with the interior concrete bleachers almost complete. There's a picture in the pack-up, and the exterior windows and cladding will be starting soon. So it is a super busy site. Questions?
I'm seeing none at this point, so perhaps we can then move on to the long-range facilities plan. Oh, one, International Community Associations in 3, it's actually Inter-Cultural Association. It's a fly, poop, and pepper sort of question or point, but just to share that.
We will correct it for next month.
Oh, Trustee Kwan and Trustee Duncan, did you have questions for this one or for, okay. Okay, so Trustee Kwan, go for it.
I hope it'll be quick, and sorry for me ahead of time with all my questions. I just noticed that the capacity was increased from 800 to 1,000. And so I just wondered what the reason for was that. Is that projections for future enrollment? Is that where, you know, SJ only holds so much, so we've, you know, catchment has changed, or why was there the difference for that capacity?
Sorry, Maura's right beside me and she knows a lot more of this project.
So the addition, there is growth in that area, and they were able to demonstrate that during the PDR. But one of the big things with VCI is when they redid all of the space, the rejigged all the space, they actually were able to make more classrooms. So none of the new classrooms are actually in the new NLC space. It's all in the existing school. And they did that also by pulling out, like, the Learning Commons is now going into the NLC. So they were able to use the old Learning Commons to make more classrooms. So they were able to expand the capacity of the school without building onto the school.
Okay, thank you very much. Now let's move on to the long-range facilities plan. Oh, Trustee Duncan, I'm not sure where to interpret your question. Have you got a question for VCI or for?
No,
okay, so let's get.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
so
on this item, yeah.
I'll start off with asking someone to move the recommended motion that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, approve the long-range facilities plan process 2024 to 2030 as presented.
Actually, Chair, I wanted to move to table this item, if I may. So
Okay.
this was an item that the previous board tabled until November to allow the new board to consider it. I would recommend to my colleagues that we table this until you know, well, I'd say February to be on the safe side, because we really won't have time to properly consider it. And I think it can wait until February. So I would suggest that we table this item for consideration at our February ops meeting, subject to the superintendent's feedback about whether February is feasible.
Yes, I look at the Secretary Treasurer. We did talk between January and February, but I think February is, I'm looking to Katrina nodding. Yeah, I think February 2023 is fine. Thank you.
Thanks for that.
So do I understand your motion is to table to February 2023?
It is indeed, yeah. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor? And the motion passes. So that is tabled to February 2023. Public disclosure of in-camera items. We did not have an in-camera meeting, so we have none. New business H1. Trustee Duncan, response to VC PAC and GVTA letters.
Yeah, hopefully it's
tables.
Oh, thanks, Chair. Yeah, hopefully it's a fairly brief one. I just wanted to put forward a motion to suggest that we, as a board, write a response. So respond to the both the VC PAC letter and also the GVTA letter that we received in October, that the previous board received, but have not been answered. And the letters are in the PAC up. Sorry, just bear with me a second. I'm just trying to get to that part of the pack up. Yeah, so the letters are on page 71 to 73 of the pack up for reference. And so the motion would be just to direct the chair to respond to those letters. One was dated the 12th of October and the other the 17th of October.
Any debate? Any questions, comments? So the motion, as I understand it, that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, direct the chair to respond to the letters received by the board from VC PAC dated October 12, 2022, and GVTA dated October 17, 2022. And we don't need the word correspondence.
Correct.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Notice of motion, I have none. General announcements, I am not aware of any. And request a motion to adjourn. Oh, sorry, wait, pause. Trustee Kwong.
Yeah, I was actually hoping I could add something at I, notice of motion.
Oh,
for,
okay. My
and
apologies.
that would be for the November 28th board meeting, if I may. And with the help of my colleagues, if anyone has any suggestions to make this sound a bit better, but that the Board of Education of the Greater Victoria School District number 61 direct the superintendent to identify the cost to increase custodial levels to the previous year, 2021-22, and provide recommendations to the board on using funds coming out of revised budget allocations toward custodial deficits.
Can I ask that you email that to trustees
Certainly.
and the superintendent?
Absolutely, I can.
And
Yeah,
Secretary Treasurer, of course.
yeah, certainly.
Okay, still no general announcements though. So I will now ask for a motion to adjourn. Going once, all those in favor? Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure meeting with all of you and good start to a new term for me. Have a good night, everyone.